The young slave girls shivered in the chill of the night, huddled together in the grimy wagon as uncertainty and fear clouded their thoughts about their unknown destination. Sleep weighed heavily on their eyes as they huddled close, sharing warmth in the chill. Without warning, the night shattered under the terrifying roar of a colossal dragon. Hope shines brightly in the girls' eyes as they await their rescue. Their journey through this extraordinary world of adventure promises unknown twists and turns ahead. To witness the fate that awaits them, continue watching until the end and show your support for the author with a like. The master of hand-to-hand combat from Tokyo's finest school pledged to give his most gifted student everything he possessed if the student could defeat him in a duel. With unwavering confidence, the master urged his pupil to seize the moment and launch his attack. Once the intense training sessions had ended, Ramamiku Hashiba admitted that the offer truly appealed to him. Curiosity sparked within. He looked forward to discovering what other surprises his mentor had in store. The art school offered the perfect setting not only for honing physical abilities, but also for nurturing the spirit. The young warrior launched a swift assault, his sword racing through a flurry of strikes. Yet the master calmly parried each blow, holding the line with unshakable confidence. The teacher inquired whether Roma had truly decided to sever ties with his master. Roma calmly replied, recalling how the mentor had often emphasized that mercy had no place in battle, not even toward one's own parents. He agreed, mentioning that each of his techniques was designed to defeat an enemy with a single blow. Such power, however, could only be unleashed by revealing one's true self and breaking through any opponent's defenses. Shido then asked Rima if she was prepared to set foot on such a perilous path. Clearly weary of their duel, the girl called out to Shido and Rami, pointing out that breakfast was getting cold and suggesting they stop their swordplay before wasting any more time. Cracking a joke, she claimed that nothing in the world was more amusing than playing games with old Shido. The teacher responded with a gentle smile, prompting the girl to comment further, questioning the point of spending any time on these matches at all. He responded that, in truth, they were actually trying to kill each other during the match. Suka only laughed at his words and asked. Shido chuckled at the girl's response and teasingly remarked that Asuka apparently enjoyed playing house with Remedis. A deep blush spread across Rima's cheeks as she hurriedly assured her grandfather that there was nothing more than friendship between her and Asuka. With a knowing smile, Shido Wastre gently disagreed, remarking that such explanations were pointless. After all, Asuka didn't come over to cook breakfast just out of friendship, especially when Rima was there. Romantic feelings are unlikely to blossom between Asuka and Rime, since Rime's shy nature keeps him oblivious to the admiration he receives from the girls around him. The shadow's voice turned stern, underscoring the gravity of the moment. True protection, it insisted, demands unwavering resolve. There can be no room for mercy toward an opponent. In response, Rime offered a sincere thanks, promising to remember these words. The old man warned him not to get arrogant, but Rime replied that someone like the old man shouldn't underestimate him. Asuka had long grown accustomed to the endless arguments between the king and the stewardess. School romance makes another appearance. This time, the class president invited everyone to join the karate club. However, true to form, Ramaha, without hesitation, she launched into a detailed list of all the benefits that came from joining the club, promising tutoring support if Ramaha would agree to represent their class in the competition. Scenes like these had become routine for their classmates, who had grown accustomed to seeing this boy constantly recruited for various activities. Tall and broad-shouldered, he attracted envious glances from many classmates who secretly wished to stand in his shoes, since he alone received a steady stream of invitations to join a variety of school clubs. The teachings of Master Shido remained vivid in my mind, urging me to show no mercy and crush my foe with a single, lightning-fast strike. Master Shido commanded techniques as effective as they were perilous, a fact that Ramala understood all too well. As she looked forward to a brief pause from her duties, Ad reached for a snack and quietly offered thanks to Asuka for the wonderful lunch she had lovingly prepared, just as she always did. Solitude had always held a certain appeal for him, and he realized he could never join a martial arts club. After all, Losing control for even a moment might end in tragedy. He could accidentally kill someone. Taking the life of a person who meant no harm would be an unforgivable mistake, one that could land him behind bars. Suddenly, a strange sensation overcame Ramef, as if the world before his eyes began to flicker and blur, everything shifting and wavering out of focus. His meal remained unfinished as, in an instant, the world around him changed. Strangers surrounded him in this unfamiliar place while soldiers summoned a man he did not recognize. With a sudden, enigmatic gesture, he swiftly commanded that a curse be placed upon Rem. The student watched the scene unfold, confusion clouding his face. Surveying the crowd dressed in strange outfits and armed with weapons, Rema quickly realized this was nothing like his school. The threatening atmosphere pressed in from all sides, prompting him to rely on the element of surprise to seize any possible advantage. Remy's thoughts echoed with the stern advice of old Shido, who always insisted that true protection of what matters most demands no mercy for the enemy. Wearing the broadest, silliest grin, he handed the soldier a box of food, silently inviting him to have a taste. The soldier faltered, a moment's hesitation sealing his fate. With lightning speed, Ramond struck several lethal blows and within seconds claimed the sword as his own. The soldier, more experienced than expected, easily dodged the thrown weapon, yet Rimac closed the distance in an instant and delivered a fatal strike straight to his neck. The soldier charged after him, but Rimac snatched up the blade from the floor with lightning speed and slashed across his foe's chest. Meanwhile, the hooded mage rushed to finish casting his spell, while the last warrior fought back with desperate determination. The mage's voice rose, echoing loudly and grating on Remus's nerves. Bracing himself for the warrior's assault, Remus instead found the mage striking first, unleashing the storm arrow spell. Within seconds, the furious mage found it hard to believe what he was seeing. Ramau had survived, skillfully dodging behind the body of a fallen warrior and using it as a living shield. There was no time to think before the next crushing blow shattered his ribs, sending sharp fragments piercing through his right leg. Casting a glance at the groaning old man, he inquired about their location and what was happening around them. Burning pain engulfed Mage Getsu, leaving him powerless to call upon his magic. Gradually, awareness dawned that he was in Ramana, the western realm of the central continent, within the royal palace of the Ultimir Empire. The old man calmly revealed to the astonished boy that he was the one who had summoned Remu from another world. Bewilderment clouded the bald mage's mind as he struggled to comprehend how such evil could have been set in motion. Wasting no time, I immediately asked him how I could escape this dreadful place and return home as soon as possible. The old man breathed heavily, his eyes filled with fear, reflecting the things he had witnessed. Getsu believed that mastering this formidable outsider would bring his ambition within reach, making dominion over the entire central continent a realistic goal. The cunning mage chose to stall, quietly hoping that the guards would arrive in time to save him. Asked the old man what was on his mind, noticing how wildly his heart pounded, a clear sign of intense agitation. Glancing at the mage's frightened face, Mal asked if there was any possible way to send him back to his own world. At those words, Guts grew even paler and began to tremble uncontrollably. Realizing there was no point in telling lies, he admitted the truth with quiet resignation. To the best of his knowledge, bringing Rem back home was simply impossible. Meanwhile, Getz sensed his lungs steadily healing and made up his mind. If he could somehow distract the boy, a rare opportunity to kill him might present itself. Irritation simmered within Getz as he thought about the absurd rules of this world, where sorcerers had the power to summon living beings but couldn't send them back. Upon inquiring about the reason for his summons to this strange world, especially since he considered himself nothing more than an ordinary student, the sorcerer Guts offered an explanation. People from another world, he revealed, possess an exceptional ability to absorb power. In this world, taking the life of a person or any other being allows one to absorb their power. As Ramen registered this chilling fact, the bald old man lunged forward once more, seeking to strike. Moving with instinctive speed, the boy responded at once, driving his knee sharply into the treacherous sorcerer's stomach. Stunned to find himself in an entirely new world, a sense of relief slowly crept in for the young man. Back home, after committing murder, arrest would have been inevitable. Saria, the granddaughter of the chief mage, bristled with indignation at the drawn-out summoning ceremony and made a desperate attempt to push past the guards. Yet the vigilant sentries refused her entry, firmly warning that interference was strictly forbidden. After all, the art of summoning people from another world was shrouded in secrecy and fraught with danger, demanding unwavering focus and complete isolation from outside influences. Ralph gently asked Saria to remain calm and wait for a while, but concern etched across her face as she admitted she simply could not find peace. Worry gripped her thoughts, especially for her grandfather, knowing that even a single misstep from him could lead to disaster. At last, her neighbor Hera quieted down, offering an apology for her rash outburst. Rolf, too, expressed his regret for his earlier words and explained that everyone was eagerly awaiting the ceremony's conclusion. Ralph acknowledged Sarah's anxiety, understanding how deeply her connection to her great-grandfather ran through their shared bloodline. Still, Sarah insisted that even the mightiest sorcerers were capable of making mistakes, pressing for the succession ritual to begin without delay. Yielding to her determination, Rolf ordered the guards to step back, granting Sarah the space she needed to prepare. By channeling magic, an explosive spell forms and crashes into the massive doors, wrapping them in searing flames. The massive metal doors barely yielded, only glowing faintly from the impact. Undeterred, Syria struck again, this time unleashing a spell of chilling frost. Metal shattered and scattered into countless fragments. Inwardly, Ralph commended the girl for her quick thinking. Without wasting a moment, they rushed into the room as Saria immediately pleaded with Ralph to find her grandfather as quickly as possible. A harrowing scene unfolded before everyone's eyes as the room stood filled to the brim with the bodies of fallen soldiers and Syrian civilians. A sharp cry escaped her lips as she rushed to the side of the bloodied elder mage, Gatsu. Instantly, Saria realized the truth. Her grandfather's chest no longer rose and fell. His breath had already fled. A shout broke the tense silence as one of the soldiers declared he had found a survivor. Bloodied and barely clinging to life, the battered warrior managed to whisper that a monster had attacked them before vanishing into the night. Orders a stretcher to be brought at once and sends the wounded soldier to the infirmary. Advises the young man to keep quiet and conserve his strength. Ralph assured the boy that help would certainly arrive and thanked him for his courage. Unaware of the boy's true origins, Ralph did not realize he was speaking to someone from another world. A newcomer who had just begun his journey in the realm of swords and sorcery through an act both daring and cunning. Witnessing the crime left Saria deeply unsettled, her mind racing to comprehend what kind of monstrous being could have taken the life of her grandfather, the head of the royal mages. The whereabouts of the cunning murderer who managed to escape from a locked room remained a troubling mystery. Even more perplexing was the grim fate of the guards. All but one had perished at the hands of the creature without a single weapon being used against them. The elf never imagined such a thing could happen. The idea of taking down an entire armed force with nothing but bare hands seemed unfathomable. Even the mightiest kingdoms would struggle to conceive of such a feat. According to the soldiers, bruises resembling finger marks appeared on the bodies of the fallen, while some showed the backs of their heads shattered beyond recognition. News of an emergency in the infirmary reached the group through a visibly shaken guard, adding yet another twist to the growing list of strange occurrences. Flames consumed Fermi, leaving everyone baffled as to how such an incident could have occurred. Never before had anything so extraordinary unfolded in this place. At that moment, Orlando strolled leisurely through the garden, savoring the enchanting fragrance of the blossoms. Shouts for help and urgent requests to fetch a mage and bring water reached Orlando's ears. Without hesitation, he responded at once, determined to uncover exactly what had happened, where the fire had broken out, and what was burning. Upon reaching the heart of the blaze, Master Orlando called upon the power of water magic, summoning a mighty storm to subdue the raging flames. Within minutes, the flames had been completely subdued, leaving behind only a few smoldering planks where the fire had raged. At that very moment, Commander Rolf and Saria arrived at the scene. The commander immediately demanded an explanation from the young mage. Orlando, however, quickly insisted that he was just as baffled and had only attempted to kill him. The crowd remained restless, their voices rising in a clamor for immediate answers about what had unfolded. Orlando snapped back, calling their questions absurd, pointing out that he had only arrived moments earlier and knew nothing at all. Arya shared that this place once served as a field hospital for wounded soldiers until a fire broke out. Curious, the girl asked if Orlando had noticed anyone suspicious on his way here. Orlando replied that he hadn't seen anyone suspicious. Suddenly, the local doctor, Ron Belt, appeared in a rush, visibly shaken. With urgency in his voice, he announced that the peculiar soldier brought to the infirmary was far more dangerous than anyone realized. He had killed Aaron. Recently, a gravely wounded soldier had indeed been brought to him, a man teetering on the fragile edge between life and death. The careless imperial doctor entrusted the wounded soldier to his assistant and Aaron's son, then retreated to his room to drink in solitude. The soldiers of the imperial army were all too familiar with the chief doctor's troubling habit. Nevertheless, the young nurse comforted the anxious soldier, assuring him that despite Aaron's youth, he possessed remarkable skill and talent as a physician. As for Aaron himself, he did not. In that instant, the unexpected happened. A breathless cry tore from the anxious warrior as a blade drove suddenly into his neck. Aaron stood frozen in shock while the young nurse's horrified scream broke the air, and in a heartbeat, the world around them dissolved into chaos. With a single swift blow, the frenzied cries of the young nurse fell silent, her resistance snuffed out in an instant. Attention then shifted to Aaron, who struggled to call for help. Overpowered by the attacker's iron grip, the young doctor found himself caught in a deadly trap, utterly defenseless. Terror gripped him as he pleaded for his release. Yet Rima calmly insisted that before anything else, she needed an answer to a crucial question. The alien from another world demanded an explanation for how to escape this place. Meanwhile, Aaron, still haunted by the horrific deaths he had witnessed, found himself too shaken by fear to respond. The grip tightened, bringing the key question back to the forefront. The sharp crack of a neck spurred Aaron into action, and the bewildered young doctor, pressured by fear, finally pointed him to the right path. Upon hearing this reply, Remus, who had already resolved to leave no witnesses behind, finished what he had started and quietly offered the young doctor an apology for everything that had transpired. Determined to further obscure his trail, the outsider from another world scanned the shelves of the infirmary, where countless bottles lined up in disarray. Without a moment's hesitation, he resolved to start a fight. The man, with a constant hint of alcohol on his breath, suggested that the killer had likely taken advantage of the panic and the blaze to slip away unnoticed. Swift action, he insisted, was now essential to track the culprit down. Amazed by the tale, she asked again in surprise who the story was about. But Saria, brimming with anger, ordered the young mage to prepare his spell and sent Ralph to the royal guards with urgent instructions. In his search for answers, every attempt unearthed only silence, as the chief imperial physician urged the boy to obey and not to argue. Meanwhile, Sarah turned to Orlando, asking him to use every skill at his disposal to uncover their enemy, granting him permission to employ teleportation. Without a moment's hesitation, Orlando cast the necessary spell, a sight that raised no eyebrows. The young magician had already reached the 3rd level of mastery and stood out as the most gifted student of Saria's late grandfather. The commander instructed Ralph to use the teleporter and head to the barracks to ready the soldiers. Ralph suggested the girl seek permission from His Majesty. Meanwhile, Saria assigned Rondal the task of maintaining order in the infirmary. The doctor vowed to do everything within his power while stationed in the ruined infirmary. Meanwhile, the rest of the group vanished without a trace, whisked away by the magic of teleportation. Haunted by memories of his father's son, the imperial physician reached for his cup once more, seeking comfort at its bottom when none could be found elsewhere. In an instant, the magic of teleportation delivered Syria right to the entrance of His Majesty's chamber. The guards stood astonished at the brazen arrival and immediately demanded an explanation for such audacity. A quiet reminder escaped his lips. This was the entrance to the throne room, a place where sudden appearances through teleportation were strictly forbidden. Such reckless actions carried the risk of losing her life. Undeterred, she firmly declared that urgent matters demanded her attention. Delivering her request to the king could not wait another moment. None dared to fulfill the girl's demand. Yet Saria raised her voice, declaring that she had an urgent matter to attend to and insisted that unless the guards let her through at once. At last, the guards gave way, allowing the furious young woman to storm into the throne room within minutes. Lord Daltonist of the Ultimi Empire grew irritated by the girl's conduct and demanded to know why Sarah dared act so inappropriately in the presence of His Majesty. With the matter being so urgent, Daltonist wondered why the head of the imperial mages had not approached the king directly. Stern and unyielding, Daltonist immediately demanded answers. As heated debates dragged on, the weary king eventually turned to the High Chancellor for assistance. A single glance at the first emperor, Veonal Aiza, spoke volumes. Hart insisted on listening to the girl, recognizing that Saria had worked tirelessly to arrange this meeting. Given her efforts, it was hardly surprising that something unexpected had occurred. His Majesty disagreed with the emperor, then offered a polite apology for his bluntness. With formalities observed, ruler Veonal turned his attention to Letts and inquired about the purpose of her visit and the reason for requesting an audience. With a respectful bow, Syria apologized for her unexpected interruption and then requested the emperor appoint her as commander of the royal guard. The boldness of her proposal left her opponent utterly stunned, prompting him to claim that it simply could not be done. Nonetheless, the emperor made a promise. Should the girl present a convincing case, she would earn the right to command the royal guard. She recounted the grim events that had ended with the brutal murder of the leader of the imperial wizards and her grandfather, Gyatso Workland. Swift action was now crucial to uncover the perpetrator. As Real Ramond made his way toward the exit, the hushed voices of those around him caught his attention, all centered on the death of a renowned magician. Only then did he realize they spoke of the bald old man who had summoned him into this world. A deep awareness settled within him. Taking the life of someone so powerful would inevitably draw unwanted attention his way. That understanding shaped his next move. Once he slipped beyond the city gates, the stranger from another world made a swift and deliberate decision. The young man explained to the elder that in his own world, people no longer fought with swords or spears, making his summoning to this realm senseless. According to his testimony, some individuals possess a rare gift that enables them to rise as the most exceptional warriors in this magical realm. Their true worth lies entirely in this extraordinary ability. Moreover, they spoke of a way to enhance their power by killing other creatures. At that moment, Remain realized he might possess the ability to absorb the abilities of others as well. The wizard's tale of dragons left Remu certain that he had crossed into a world unlike his own. All that remained was to determine his next move. Inside a modest roadside inn, Remu quietly congratulated himself on his clever decision to leave his soldier's uniform outside the city limits. His pursuers would never suspect that he was hiding in plain sight, calmly enjoying dinner at the local tavern in the very heart of town. Using the money taken from the deceased, Romab purchased a fresh set of clothes and began to contemplate his next move. Suddenly, the innkeeper approached and, with curiosity in her eyes, asked whether he truly was a traveler, mentioning that she had no recollection of ever seeing him there before. An impressive barmaid brought Remy a massive mug of cold beer, even though he hadn't placed an order. She explained that because of him, she had hardly had a moment to catch her breath, so sharing a drink together would be a nice reward. The cheerful owner confessed she would love to treat the charming young man to something special. Yet, realization dawned on Romero about how comical his predicament was. He was only 16. Feeling a touch embarrassed, he admitted it put him in an awkward spot. At last, gratitude for the meal was offered, and he took a few careful sips. Realization dawned that the rigors of his relentless training had aged his appearance beyond his true years. In this place, acting as an adult had become second nature. The woman fixed him with a thoughtful gaze, remarking on his good character and, with some surprise, noting his decision to stay. She admitted that it was rare to hear anyone described as a well-mannered person, so there could be no doubt. Rema stood out as a polite and kind-hearted young man. Guessing that this might be Reima's first visit to the imperial capital, she noticed how distracted he seemed. Reima admitted her assumption was correct and quietly shared that his parents had recently passed away after a long illness. Quick to apologize for bringing up painful memories, the man received a gentle reassurance from the boy, who had already come to terms with his loss. Now, a new determination filled his thoughts. The prospect of building a life in this city intrigued him, and with a hopeful tone, he asked if good job opportunities might be found here. He mentioned that he was skilled with a sword. After a brief pause, the woman considered his words and then replied that blacksmithing would not suit him, as he was already too old to start such a trade. As for the idea of becoming a merchant, she shook her head and explained that one must begin as an apprentice to pursue that path, and such a job could not be obtained without the proper start. The tavern owner suggested that Ramad join the local adventurers guild. With his skill at wielding a sword, he could easily make his way as a mercenary or an adventurer. Apologizing for his lack of knowledge, he politely asked her to explain exactly how someone could begin this business. In response, the woman assured him it was a straightforward process. First, one simply needed to visit the bank, then proceed to register directly with the guild itself. In addition, everything is conveniently close by and there is no need for any paperwork. The process moves along swiftly. Without wasting a moment, he expressed his gratitude to the woman for her advice. The tavern keeper, a genuinely kind soul, invited him to stop by her establishment, mentioning that lately, many guild members had made it their preferred spot to unwind as night fell. By a strange twist of fate, a stranded alien found himself within the bustling halls of the Adventurers Guild. Approaching the guild's administrator, he politely requested to be registered as an adventurer and inquired about the essential details he should understand before embarking on this new path. The young woman behind the counter instantly recognized a newcomer and requested to see a bank card. Having already visited the bank, Raman produced his card without hesitation. She carefully examined the details and inquired if he was truly 16. With confidence, Raman assured her that everything was correct and there was no mistake. He explained that his appearance made him seem much older than he actually was, and that he had grown accustomed to people constantly asking about it. The girl apologized for her moment of confusion. He gently reassured her, pointing out the soft blush on her cheeks. Clearly, the new apothecary had already found a place in her evening daydreams as a charming companion. The eccentric girl resolved to resume her responsibilities and promised to explain the guidelines for traveling as part of the guild. This organization, as it turned out, operated as an expansive network with branches scattered across the continent. Every adventure is officially recorded, awarding the participant a specific rank within their tier. The tier reflects an adventurer's strength and skill, while the attained rank shows their standing among peers. He explained that taking the life of a living being allowed one to inherit a fraction of its power. The girl, however, wanted clarification regarding how this worked at the lowest level. At that time, only a single individual had ever reached the 7th level by relying solely on their own strength. Reima, hesitating for a moment, asked for clarification, wanting to be sure she understood correctly that the 7th level was indeed the highest, and wondering what made this level so significant. The administrator assured the newcomers that there was no need to worry about such matters yet. Everything essential would become clear as they grew and progressed. For now, she offered only a broad overview of the work adventurers undertake. The young woman began describing the different types of quests and explained that in the case of a combat mission, such as eliminating specific wild beasts, 3 copper coins would be awarded for each defeated creature. Additionally, there are further opportunities to... The administrator explained that some missions, known as escort quests, require adventurers to travel beyond the borders of the kingdom. This answer came after he inquired about tasks that might involve venturing outside the realm. Fortunately for the FREX adventurers, only one path now lay before them. The next step called for a journey to the nearest town, where fresh quests awaited, just as it should be for those seeking adventure. After quickly finding the right magazine, the girl clarified that only 3 destinations were currently available to visit: Harvik, Merfeline, and Oidu. Rue's mind focused solely on escape. Now a wanted man, he had to leave the Ultimi Empire without delay. And at last, a perfect opportunity had presented itself. A glance at the map on the wall revealed that the quickest route to the border ran south from the capital. In the end, Ramesh agreed to take on the task and set his sights on Merfilen, a city lying far to the east of the continent. Arriving from another world, the hero sought to purchase a weapon. To his surprise, there were no Japanese katanas to be found. Among the available options, a longsword stood out as the best choice, but its price was far beyond his means. At their last meeting, the innkeeper had inquired whether the young man possessed any weapons. With quiet pride, Mav had replied that his greatest weapon was his own hand. The master pointed out how foolish that kind of claim was. It wasn't the towering, powerful monsters that usually claim the lives of adventurers, since escape from such threats was always possible. More often, the truly dangerous encounters came from weaker creatures that lulled adventurers into careless overconfidence, leading to their downfall. She explained that outside the city limits, uncertainty lingered everywhere, so one must always remain prepared for whatever unexpected events might arise. Realizing the truth in the caring woman's words, he admitted to himself how little he actually understood about the world around him. Turning to the merchant, the boy quietly asked for guidance in choosing a suitable weapon. The weapons dealer greeted customers with a cold demeanor, immediately declaring that nothing in his stock would be considered comfortable, and anyone dissatisfied was free to leave. Yet, the mention of the innkeeper as a reference transformed his attitude. Warmth and friendliness replaced his earlier hostility. Upon arriving in town, he explained, he had just registered with the local adventurers guild. The blacksmith requested that he wait a moment and firmly warned him not to use any odd phrases about the weapons, such as calling them comfortable or saying that they fit. A few minutes later, the man invited you to examine an exquisite dagger. Remind found himself marveling at the weapon's flawless craftsmanship and began to suspect that it had been forged using a unique technique. The guard noted with surprise that the boys had grasped the essence. Despite its modest price, the dagger's blade possessed remarkable strength, owed entirely to the unique method used in its forging, making it nearly unbreakable. The guard praised the young man for his remarkable talent in assessing weaponry, a skill reserved for only a select few, even among the seasoned warriors. Afterward, Rima requested a look at the saber with the curved blade, which someone had left behind. The master armorer inquired whether the man referred to a sword known as a katana, a weapon hailing from another world. If that was the case, he admitted he had no idea how to craft such a blade. Keeper realized that ordinary weapons might be necessary after all. Turning to Remus, he suggested they head to a special room, one that held an entire arsenal of weaponry collected from another world. Among the exhibits, the tonfa stood out, a rare weapon from Okinawa, a 3-section staff designed to be assembled into a single unit. The display also included the unchaku, which transformed into a truly dangerous tool in skilled hands. In addition, the sai was showcased, a versatile weapon suitable for both offense and defense. The guard observed the boy intently, his gaze fixed on the way the youth handled the 3-section staff. Curiosity piqued, he asked if the boy had training with such a weapon. Remar replied that among the master's collection, Rem also noticed a gabishi, a compact weapon designed for quick, decisive strikes that could double as a throwing tool. His gaze then wandered to a chakram, the circular throwing blade of ancient India, and to a folding staff, its clever design promising immense utility in a variety of situations. Grasping the tonfa, he displayed remarkable skill with this rare weapon, leaving the master armorer thoroughly impressed. The shopkeeper watched in surprise and asked where Remy had learned to handle such a weapon. Remy replied that he relied on instinct, simply trying to grasp how the tonfa worked. Still, he admitted to having doubts about its true effectiveness in an actual fight. Curiosity flickered in his eyes as he noticed an unusual weapon among Marika Hosari's collection. He had attempted to master it before, yet confidence in his skill still eluded him. Determined, he leaned in to study the throwing weapon more closely. After inspecting Master Ramaz's collection several times, the young man finally settled on the hussar sabers and a chakram. In addition, he requested a sword from the master, determined to master the weapons of this world as quickly as possible. Rimar returned to the tavern and immediately encountered the innkeeper. Without hesitation, she asked about his meeting with the master blacksmith. In response, Remar proudly revealed the new weapon he had just acquired. Relief brightened the woman's face when she noticed the boy now carried a weapon, finally able to defend himself. At that moment, the innkeeper inquired whether Ramadan had received any assignment letters from the guild. Completely lost in confusion, the young man waited for her to clarify. The woman explained that any newcomer was expected to receive such a letter from the guild. Most likely, he had simply forgotten about it, as beginners often did. An experienced adventurer, clearly well into his cups, assured that there was nothing to worry about. Mistakes were simply part of every beginner's journey. Remake could return to the guild tomorrow without trouble and collect the assignment letter. Ramap expressed genuine gratitude to the man for his encouraging words. Expressing gratitude for their kindness, he mentioned that Romai was still just a newcomer to the guild and encouraged everyone to lend him a hand whenever he needed it. The lively dinner with fellow adventurers now just a memory, Ramay finally found himself in the quiet solitude of his room. Sinking into the comfort of a real bed, he allowed himself a moment of relief. Memories of the day's events drifted through his mind, filling him with pride. Despite the challenges, he had kept his composure and seamlessly taken on the role of a local guard. Utilizing his cunning, he managed to outwit his pursuers, who walked right past without ever noticing the stranger. Yet even after such a victory, it remained dangerous to lower his guard. A single lapse in vigilance could bring everything crashing down. Memories of Commander Rolf surfaced, a man whispered to be a legendary warrior in this world. Yet concern lingered over the girl's territory, for it was she who had orchestrated the search and held the soldiers under her command. Danger could easily be lurking there as well. Among them stood a boy named Orlando, yet the greatest sense of danger seemed to radiate from the girl. In the brief moments Orlando spent with Saria, an overwhelming sense of unease took root within him. Even such a short encounter left no doubt. If she were a piece on a chessboard, she would undoubtedly command the game as the queen. The investigation into the murder of the head magician weighed heavily on the mind of Shaldana Isengard, the Empire's first princess. Driven by determination, she threw herself into the search for the mysterious culprit. Her subordinates found themselves bewildered. Tracking down an unseen figure who left behind no trace or clue seemed a daunting, almost impossible challenge. Princess Sheldon calmly reassured her subordinates that there were truly no obstacles to be concerned about. Despite never having seen the face of this cunning assassin, she maintained full confidence in her ability to recognize him when the moment arrived. Outraged by the actions of the authorities, she demanded an explanation for the continued failure to capture her grandfather's killer. Albana pointed out that searching any further at night would be too dangerous, so they should head back and discuss their next steps in the morning. Saria objected to this plan, unwilling to let the search end so soon, but in the end, the princess turned to Orlando and asked him to calm the girl. Without delay, Orlando hurried to carry out Sheldon's order, offering Saria a quick apology as he did so. The girl struggled to break free, yet Orlando denied her any opportunity to escape. Meanwhile, Commander Rolf turned to the princess, inquiring about their destination for the following day. She explained that the next day their unit would split into two teams. One, under her command, would head east, while Rolf would lead the second group toward the south. Lost in thought over this decision, she speculated that the fugitive would most likely head south toward the continent. The princess agreed, since the southern border was indeed the closest, yet an uneasy feeling about the east lingered in her mind. Among the knights, Ralph stood out as the most seasoned and pointed out that the killer might have chosen to head east for a variety of reasons, and memories of her talented assistant, Sato, from the Ryer continent, brought a smile to the princess's face. Their relationship flourished, and Sato always handled her duties with admirable skill. The suggestion arose to enlist the forces stationed at the Adelpho garrison. Princess, however, firmly rejected this idea. Removing soldiers from Adelpho, she explained, would leave them exposed to an attack from Zara, and such vulnerability would discourage any hope of support from the local nobility. Ralph accepted her reasoning without protest, recognizing their good fortune that the imperial aristocrats had not already rebelled after the chief mage's death. Moreover, in such circumstances, they had no choice but to rely entirely on their own strength. By now, Remy had traveled far from the imperial capital and, for the first time in this unfamiliar world, set out on a hunt. A pack of fierce wolves challenged the young Japanese girl, but she effortlessly scattered them in mere moments. After triumphing over the monsters, Rima departed from Ultima's capital and arrived at the Merfalna branch of the Adventurers Guild. The local receptionist, a young Adnan woman, couldn't hide her amazement upon seeing the long list of creatures this rookie had defeated single-handedly. Meanwhile, Rima inquired about the nearest place to sharpen a sword, since the blade had grown noticeably dull during the fierce battle. Genuine astonishment colored the administrator's face as she took in the scene. The newcomer had managed to wipe out every single monster using nothing but a sword, and all within the span of a single day. At that moment, the girl realized the boy must be a mage, one who commanded formidable destructive magic. Soon after, the administrator made an announcement. Ramesh's reward would amount to 4 silver coins and 31 copper ones. Lunch back then cost 5 copper coins, a memory from nearly 43,000 years ago. Earning the award marked a true milestone, filling Romeo with genuine pride in his accomplishment. The young woman from the administration also congratulated him warmly on his promotion to WF rank. Surprise flickered across his face as he realized how quickly he had climbed the rankings. The administrator glanced his way, curious if he truly took no pride in this achievement. A wave of pure happiness washed over him, the speed of his success taking him by surprise. While it's common to hear such remarks from talented people, this time the news truly captured attention. With Remy's promotion, the entire reward was doubled, an unexpected windfall for a newcomer. Remy now possessed not only a prestigious title but also a considerable sum of money, both testaments to the significance of his accomplishment. Genuine joy filled him as he savored his victory, and the realization quickly struck him that, in this world, earning around 100,000 yen in a single day was within his reach. The warnings from the hotel owner echoed in his mind. Never let your guard down, because unchecked confidence could mean the difference between life and death, even against a weaker foe. With thoughts of his own safety lingering, Roman resolved to find out how much treatment would cost. Acquiring truly high-quality potions, carefully crafted through magic, requires a substantial amount of gold. Such a top-tier elixir might demand a price of around 10 gold coins. A disappointed sigh escaped him upon hearing the exorbitant price. Converted to Japanese yen, it amounted to a staggering fortune. The realization dawned that in this world, even the smallest injury could prove fatal. Yet for now, he remained unharmed. Within the same guild, a disgruntled adventurer voiced his frustration, feeling cheated after risking his life and receiving none of the reward he believed he deserved. Horace, the guild administrator, attempted to reason with him, gently reminding him that despite his efforts, he still had not reached the ranks of a top-tier adventurer. However, this particular thief had no connection to the Crimson Moon gang mentioned in the assignment. While Horace wasted his time on the wrong criminal, the Crimson Moon gang struck a neighboring village. The most horrifying part was that, during the attack, many young women were abducted, and several locals lost their lives. News of this tragedy stunned Horace, prompting him to double-check if he had understood correctly. If the Red Moon gang had been dealt with sooner, all of this might have been prevented. The administrator avoided giving a direct answer, but admitted that the girls taken were likely to be sold into slavery. Overwhelmed by guilt, Horace offered to have the fine deducted from his own account. Drawn in by the conversation, Rame asked the girl what she meant. She explained that, unfortunately, incidents like this happened quite frequently in this place. Horace had an impressive reputation as a seasoned mercenary, yet on this occasion, he neglected the crucial step of reconnaissance, a mistake that led to disastrous consequences. While carrying out a task, it is essential to remember that the consequences of your actions can shape the lives of many. This awareness holds true for dreamers as well, urging them to weigh each decision with care and responsibility. The celebrated adventurer paused, reflecting on how recklessly he had approached his quests in the past. In this real world, everything played out differently than in a game. Here, carelessness could cost someone their life. While studying the map, Ramaya realized that heading further east would soon bring him to the city of Enro. At the same time, he recalled hearing that bandits were said to lurk in these lands, though none had crossed his path yet. Meanwhile, a band of brigands launched an attack on a small caravan, their spirits soaring at the sight of plentiful loot, a chest overflowing with gold coins. Their spoils didn't end there. Among the captives were beautiful young girls claimed as trophies. 2 young beauties, sisters and captives, fell easily into the hands of a cunning bandit who claimed them as his spoils. A fierce debate broke out among the bandits over the fate of the girls. Some pushed for a night of entertainment before secretly killing the sisters and keeping their leader in the dark. Meanwhile, the master who owned the captives had fled in disgrace with his guards, a move that drew even more ridicule from the bandits. For some time now, I have kept a careful watch from a distance, having stumbled upon a gang of bandits by chance. The girls warned the bandits that any attempt to touch them would end in tragedy. Together with their sister, they would take their own lives by biting themselves. The bandits only laughed, their jeers echoing harshly. With cold certainty, they reminded the girls of their status as mere slaves, pointing out that the collars fastened around their necks would prevent any chance of escape or even the solace of ending their suffering. The eldest of the bandits, craving amusement, chose to entertain himself with the girls and ordered the others to keep a close watch on everything unfolding. Meanwhile, Remain observed the thieves intently, inching ever closer with careful, measured steps. Acceptance dawns that relying on the chain for defense will ultimately prove futile. As the bandit took a few steps forward, a sharp object pierced his neck, leaving behind a vivid crimson cut. With lightning-fast reflexes, Ramak instantly spotted him near the girls and made a firm decision to stand in their defense. Their anger flared when they saw some boy daring to interfere in their affairs, boldly calling himself the infamous Red Moon. The master touched down lightly and strode over to the bandits. His calm demeanor left them visibly stunned, their astonishment plain on their faces. The bandits plotted to get rid of the stranger carrying insulin, but Romé anticipated their plans and stood fully prepared for the inevitable fight. Remy hurled his throwing disc, and in the next instant drew his knife and launched a flurry of slashing attacks at his opponent. The gunfight lasted only a few seconds before a single bandit remained, trembling with fear and uttering a terrified whimper. With a look of contempt, he studied the terrified boy before delivering a powerful blow to his face. The sisters gazed silently at their rescuer, uncertain how to respond. Meanwhile, Rima gently checked on the enslaved girls, asking if they were all right. Despite the visible fear among the girls, Rima could tell they were unharmed. Suddenly, one of the maidservants, Dave Girl, noticed a streak of blood on Rama's face and quickly yet gently dabbed the wound with her handkerchief. He assured them that he was perfectly fine. Introducing herself as Rora, the blonde explained that the girl beside her was her younger sister. It quickly became clear that the girls were twins, distinguishable only by the color of their hair. With deep bows, they expressed heartfelt gratitude to Rama for saving them. Roy replied that he was not entitled to accept gratitude from a slave girl. He described how he had waited patiently for the perfect moment, the one when the bandits finally relaxed, set aside their weapons, and began to lower their trousers. In the instant their guard slipped, he struck with swift precision. He offered an honest confession, admitting he would not hide behind excuses. Yet genuine remorse filled his words for all the hardship the girls had endured. Ramonda was gently urged not to blame herself, reminded that the outcome could have been far worse. Rora echoed her sister's sentiment and offered an apology for never having properly thanked Remus for all he had done to help them. The room settled into a hush as all eyes examined the sisters. Their skin glowed with a warm, sun-kissed hue, and their toned figures commanded attention with undeniable allure. Graceful curves hinted at a captivating beauty that could easily cloud anyone's judgment. Heat surged through the young man's face, and in that moment, he finally understood why the bandits had been powerless to resist such temptation. He instantly put on a thoughtful expression, pretending to ponder something significant. Meanwhile, his mind lingered on another notion. The girls' outfits reminded him strikingly of belly dancers from Arabian tales. Adding to the surreal impression, the collars and chains appeared completely out of place. The boy asked the sisters for their surname, but Rora replied with a hint of sorrow that sleeves have no family names. Realizing the weight of his question, the boy quickly regretted asking something so painful. The sisters, turning the conversation, inquired about their savior's name. Introducing himself, the boy gently requested that they refrain from calling him a savior. Being addressed by his name alone was enough for him. Emma asked the girls about their plans and offered to take them to the nearest town, Enro. However, Sarah explained that leaving was impossible without their master's permission. Remain stared in disbelief at such a senseless response, her voice trembling as she asked the girls if they truly meant what they were saying after everything they had been through. Memories of their master resurfaced in her mind. The moment the bandits appeared, he had fled at once with his guards, never pausing to consider what would become of the girl. The sisters appeared utterly unfazed by the situation, which only deepened Remy's confusion. To him, everything seemed so senseless that he couldn't begin to understand what these grown-up sisters were thinking. He inquired whether their plan was now to simply remain where they were, waiting until their master returned and resumed giving orders. They agreed to go along with the plan, while the young man struggled to comprehend that any of this was real. Every moment struck him as utterly absurd and senseless. At the same time, Ramav remained sharply aware of the imperial soldiers pursuing him, led by ruthless individuals. Eager to rid himself of further trouble, he pressed forward, intent on delivering both girls to the city as quickly as possible and putting them out of his mind for good. He explained that nightfall was approaching and unknown monsters could be lurking nearby. To avoid attracting them, everyone needed to remove the bodies as quickly as possible. He explained that once he secured the area, he would continue his journey. The girls offered no objections and thanked the young man once again for his help. As he carried the bodies of the fallen bandits and guards, the thought returned that his help to these girls must remain limited, though deep down he sensed a hint of hypocrisy in his decision. Having completed his mission, Ramek believed the girls were now out of harm's way. Yet a strange sound suddenly sliced through the quiet, immediately drawing his attention. One of the bandits had hidden himself in the bushes while Ramaz was distracted. Seizing the perfect opportunity, he hurriedly mounted a horse, snatched one of the sisters, and dashed away at full speed. At that very moment, as it turned out, the bandit had taken Sarah captive, keeping Ramakursta behind for a more personal settling of scores. Convinced that he had already eliminated every other outlaw, he saw no further obstacles in his way. To his astonishment, Ramesh spotted a vial of precious healing elixir lying on the ground, its value reaching 1,000,000 yen. In that moment, the realization struck that any hope of catching up to the bandit fleeing on horseback had vanished. Offering Rory a steady hand, he helped her to her feet and quietly vowed to do everything within his power to save Sarah. Suddenly, the girl declared her ability to handle the situation on her own and asked Rima to make a small cut, not on her face but precisely on the pinky finger of her left hand. Confusion clouded Rima's mind as he stared at his finger, uncertain why he needed to cut it at all. The entire situation struck him as utterly absurd. Yet amid the chaos, Sarah snapped that there was no time for explanations. Rima simply had to do what she asked and do it without delay. The absurdity of the situation reached its peak. Even so, Rima pressed the blade to his finger, making a small cut, and, with hesitation lingering in his voice, asked if he had followed the request correctly. Remy's hand caught the girl's attention, or rather, the tiny bead of blood on her skin drew her in. Leaning closer, the girl began to murmur softly, her words barely more than a breath. In that fleeting moment, Remy remembered the odd sensation he had felt around these girls from the very start. Perhaps they were far from ordinary slaves. Grasping the boy's bloodied finger in her hand, she turned to the great god Garv and began to speak her solemn vow, pleading for him to hear her words. A curious tension stirred within him as he quietly observed the enchanting girl engaged in her prayers and mysterious rituals with his blood. Uncertain if he fully grasped the situation, he asked her to clarify and offer an explanation. After the prayer ended, Sarah respectfully addressed the deity, asking it to accept her offering of blood and to forge a blood pact. At that moment, a mysterious radiance gently enveloped her entire form. Before long, the massive collar and heavy chains shattered into countless fragments, as though they had been crafted from fragile ice or delicate glass. She announced that everything was ready and apologized to the young man for using her abilities without his permission. The sincerity behind her words left Ramea astonished, rendering him speechless in the face of her honesty. Once more, Sarah slipped into prayer, though this time her words took on the cadence of a spell. Clear as day, Romak heard her plead, asking him to finally cut through that cursed barrier. In that moment, Sarah unleashed the spell of the magical blade, and it struck the bandit without delay. At the very last moment, Brigand managed to hit his target, cursing under his breath and wishing the captives had not turned out to be witches. To Brigand's astonishment, the young girl wielded magic nearly identical to the treacherous old man who had summoned him to this place earlier. The arrow veered slightly off course, yet managed to bring the horse crashing down. In an instant, the bandit lost his upper hand. Later, Sarah approached Remus with a desperate plea to bring back her sister and seek vengeance against the wicked bandit. Sarah pleaded with Remus to set out at once to help her sister, fearing the bandit might harm her. The fallen rider lay at least a kilometer away, making it a mystery how anyone could have reached the spot so quickly. Nevertheless, Sarah had already taken note of this unusual detail. Grabbing Remus by the hand, he warned him that they were about to sprint at full speed. Before Remus could utter a word, a sudden burst of momentum swept him off his feet as if a passing bus had whisked him away. Within moments, Rama had crossed a vast distance, marveling at the ease and comfort this new way of traveling provided. Without hesitation, she rushed to her sister, while Ram, barely managing to keep his balance, hurried after her. The emotional moment of the sisters' reunion ended in a heartfelt embrace, while Rhyme let out a quiet sigh of relief, knowing that all was well at last. Turning to look back, the young man measured the astonishing distance he had covered in so little time and truly appreciated, for the first time, the advantages of wind magic. When asked if he had ever heard of such magic before, Romant immediately realized his slip and sensed that he might unintentionally give away his true origins. The boy was about to insist he had never encountered magic, yet at the same moment, he noticed a growing suspicion flickering across the girl's face. Confusion clouded his thoughts as he tried to comprehend how someone so skilled in martial arts could remain utterly unaware of magic's existence. Deep in conversation, the sisters reminisced about everything that had happened recently. At the same time, Rime remembered the bandit struggling to escape once more. Held back by the thick mud and tangled branches, the man's horses found themselves trapped, halting his flight. The warriors kept a watchful eye on the bandit and soon agreed that only their new ruler, Ramash, should determine his fate. The matter would be left entirely in his hands. A flicker of surprise crossed his face as the two beautiful girls addressed him as their lord, yet he accepted the weight of responsibility and resolved to confront the bandits. Realizing there was only one way out, he drew his sword with determination. The frightened bandit backed away, moving with increasing caution. At first, he attempted to buy his freedom, vowing to pay any sum just to be released. When his offer fell flat, threats quickly followed. He boasted of his gang, over 100 strong, who would surely seek revenge. Their leader, Saryudo, he warned, would neither forget nor forgive the death of his comrade. Raman replied that the bandit was unbelievably foolish. If he were to die in this forest, no one would ever discover the identity of his killer. He went on to point out that survival was no longer an option for the bandit, urging him to accept the inevitable. Desperate to cry out that he had a daughter, his voice was silenced by the ruthless stroke of a sharp sword. With the act done, Rame turned to the girls and calmly asked if this was truly their desire. In response, the sisters simply nodded in silent confirmation. Sarah admitted they had acted too quickly in killing the bandit, realizing too late that he could have provided valuable information. Another man voiced his doubts, pointing out that it was unlikely the fellow possessed any valuable information. Since there was no way to verify his words, everything he said could just as easily be a lie, making it all too easy for him to deceive them. The most important thing was that their kidnapped sister had finally been rescued, and now a sense of safety settled over everyone. Once more, he expressed his gratitude to the young man, addressing him as a master. In response, Remain remarked that constant thanks were unnecessary, and wondered aloud why he was being called master. After all, they had only known each other for an hour, making such formality seem rather peculiar. She explained that they had sworn a blood oath, and from that moment forward, Ramao became her master. In their land, such a ritual was considered highly unusual. This revelation confirmed the boy's suspicions. Rora then requested to undergo the same blood oath ritual, wishing to recognize Ramao as her own master as well. She pleaded with Yoon to help her sister break free from the collar and shackles, urging him not to turn away. Confusion filled Ramao, unable to make sense of the situation unfolding before him. He requested a brief pause to catch his breath, then calmly explained there was no need for the sisters to call for him, attend to his needs, or serve him in any way. The sisters' faces clouded with sorrow, and tears welled in their eyes as they became convinced the master neither cherished nor valued them. Remad, taken aback by their unexpected reaction, hastily tried to respond. With a calm voice, he reminded them how recently they had vowed to wait loyally for their true master, refusing to leave the place. Yet now their resolve had faded. They served another, addressing him as their lord. The shift in their allegiance was difficult to comprehend. They explained that if they managed to forge a blood pact, it would set them free from their former master's commands. For now, though, Rora remained bound to him by a spell, unable to leave this place. He asked if they would come with him to the city of Enro once he fulfilled their request. The girls would likely have agreed, promising to follow their new master wherever he wished. Eager to end this absurd affair as quickly as possible, the boy made up his mind to bring it to a close. Next, he informed the girls they would need to share every detail with him once they reached the city. For now, it was important to hurry and arrange a place to meet. Following this, Sarah requested permission to return briefly to the forest, intending to collect her important belongings with her sister. Straining to see more clearly, he focused on the burly stranger standing beside the overturned barrel. The newcomer glanced around nervously, rummaging carefully through his belongings. With genuine relief, Batman announced that he had finally found Roro and Sarah. Eager concern filled his voice as he immediately asked how much harm the bandits had caused them, his care for their well-being unmistakable. The unexpected meeting sparked visible displeasure. A repulsive, portly man shamelessly launched into questioning the young beauties, probing them for details about the misdeeds committed by the bandits. The former master erupted in outrage, declaring that he had spent 5 years raising 2 frivolous girls only for the bandits to corrupt them, leaving them utterly worthless in his eyes. Without warning, she drew her sword and barked a sharp command for the fat man to stay back. Any attempt on his part to step forward would result in her blade finding its way into his oversized backside. The slave owner launched into a tirade, hurling contemptuous insults at the girls and branding them as mere commoners, insignificant, powerless, and utterly without the right to defy the will of their true master. Observing the scene unfold, he turns to the girls and inquires whether this repulsive scoundrel is truly the master they had mentioned earlier. He admitted that it truly had been him, although the girls had always seen him as their greatest enemy and despised him more than anything else in the world. Realizing events were unfolding far differently than he had imagined, he considered asking Remus to put an end to his pointless antics. Compliments were given to the young man for his impressive physique, along with a curious inquiry about whether he might be striving to play the part of a shining prince for someone's sake. Boasting that he could sell Remus for a handsome profit to true slave connoisseurs, Fetmen spoke his final words. Whistling through the air, throwing discs struck his massive head, ending his life in a manner that greatly amused the girls. Afterward, Rora and Sarah seize their swords and drive the blades deep into the grotesque body of their former master, finally claiming their long-awaited revenge for years of torment and humiliation. The final note in the life of the stout slaveholder sounded as a thin stream of blood trickled from his mouth, marking an undeniable end, not only for him, but also for the 2 beautiful slaves who had endured every stage of suffering by his hand. No one dared comment on the savage massacre. Instead, the group insisted on leaving for the city as quickly as possible, determined to reach a safer place where they could discuss everything in peace. The girls still carried traces of blood on their bodies. With all the essentials packed, Striped Remet and his 2 enchanting companions set off on their journey. The young man believed he had only intended to rescue someone, yet now found himself entangled in even greater trouble than before. As night descended over the city of Eru, Remus set about ordering dinner for the evening. Meanwhile, the twin sisters took advantage of a traveling bathhouse to wash away the blood and grime from their enchanting bodies. The girls joined Remy and apologized for being late. Their master invited everyone to share dinner and enjoy some conversation around the table. However, when he noticed that the girls remained standing, he asked why they wouldn't take a seat. Sarah quickly explained that slaves were not permitted to sit at the same table as their master. The uneasy expression on Ramabit's face instantly signaled to the sisters that they ought to have changed their clothes before approaching their host. Within minutes, the enchanting twins reappeared, now dressed in light attire. Romalfa noted with relief that they had at least put something on. She then invited the sisters once more to sit beside her. Once again, the sisters declined, explaining they would eat later, as it was forbidden for them to sit beside their mistress. Rema found herself stunned by such senseless customs, and gently reminded them that, noticing the shadow of sorrow in Sarah's eyes, he realized that recalling her past brought her discomfort. With gentle care, he assured her that he only had a few questions to ask. He wanted to be sure he understood correctly. Did the sisters always fulfill the wishes of their master? The girl explained that not all of them acted in perfect harmony. He, after all, was their master. So whenever he asked them to join him at the table and eat together, they obeyed his command. The girls exchanged startled glances, unable to hide their astonishment at such an unexpected order, something that had always been strictly forbidden. Yet, with a gentle gesture, the romantic invited them to take their seats beside him, easing their hesitation. He explained that eating alone made the food lose its flavor and delight. At that moment, Bremet's thoughts wandered to Shido and his granddaughter, filling his heart with a gentle ache. For the first time in their lives, Saru obeyed and her sister received an invitation to join an ordinary table, taking a seat beside the person they had always considered their master. Bremet took note of how naturally the sisters blended into the group. Next, he asked again whether the girls truly considered him their master after the blood exchange. She nodded and clarified that according to the terms of the blood oath, an unbreakable bond of master and subordinates now united them. From this moment forward, both she and Rory had become Remus's battle slaves. Beyond cult slaves and ordinary laborers, another distinct group exists: battle slaves. Owners deploy these fighters exclusively during conflicts, while in times of peace, shackles and restraints keep their strength in check to prevent any uprising. Permission from their master is required before they can engage in combat, ensuring control over their formidable power. If girls truly have the freedom to make bloody pacts with that infamous merchant family and even the right to choose their own new master, then restricting their power with seals seems utterly pointless. Without hesitation, Rory asked that everything about their past, which they were about to reveal, remain a secret. Romero sensed that he was on the verge of learning something truly significant and earnestly vowed to honor Rory's request. She revealed that, like Rory, her last name was Malphist, and that her family had long held the title of senior knights in the Kingdom of Quift, a realm situated along the central continent's western coast. The news caught Remus off guard. Suddenly, a host of new details slid into focus for him, challenging everything he thought he knew about the slave girls. 5 years earlier, during the war with the Shadow Kingdom, a conflict sparked by a foolish argument over trade tariffs, a shocking betrayal unfolded. The Chancellor's treachery sealed the fate of their homeland, the Kingdom of Quift, wiping it from existence. Forced to abandon all they knew, they escaped aboard a ship cleverly disguised as a merchant vessel. As the journey continued, another betrayal awaited them. This time, it was the guards who turned against them, ultimately selling them into slavery to the merchant Azo. Horror washed over him as he took in everything that had transpired, and a deep understanding dawned of the terrible ordeals these two young girls had endured. The sisters admitted that they had placed genuine trust in their protectors, never suspecting just how vulnerable a person could become when faced with temptation. Sarah speculated that if the girls hadn't been sold, the guards would likely have killed them. She also revealed that their master turned out to be the same stout merchant they had eliminated in the forest. He was the one who had taught them their unique combat skills. Long ago, during their childhood, they lost their beloved father. He had taught them both the art of blood oath, insisting that this knowledge would prove essential in the days to come. At that moment, Reima realized just how shrewd their father had been. He had foreseen even this turn of fate. Curious, she asked whether their father had truly suspected they might end up in slavery, and if that was why he taught them to cope with any hardship. The girls confirmed her suspicions, explaining everything had unfolded exactly as he had predicted. She shared that she and her sister had been waiting a long time for someone they could trust. Remus became that person for them. After considering what he had heard, Remus proclaimed his decision as master. He granted the girls their freedom. In addition, he handed the sisters the money he had received from the traitor Azasu, giving them the means to begin a new, independent life. Yet Sarah refused, explaining that Raman had safeguarded not only their lives, but also the honor of their ancient lineage. Out of gratitude for his bold act, they longed to repay him, even if it meant risking their own lives. The situation was more complicated than it appeared. He had his own reasons for acting that way. Quite unexpectedly, Sarah wondered aloud if what truly troubled the master was the fact that he came from another world. Remap's complete lack of knowledge about magic or blood immediately caught their attention. For someone with such remarkable combat experience to show no understanding of these matters struck everyone as truly unusual. The realization dawned that his origins belonged to another world, and it was a man named Getsu from the Empire who had summoned him here. Since that moment, a life on the run had become his relentless reality. Successfully slipping out of the Empire's capital without drawing attention, he made sure that no one could recognize his face. This anonymity became his greatest advantage. The only thing he made clear was his pull toward the open road. Certain that Rory and Sarah would only hinder his escape, he never even considered turning them into slaves. Realizing that his pursuers remained relentless and might soon recognize Rory and Sarah as potential threats, he understood the danger of staying together. Parting ways seemed the safest choice, allowing each girl to disappear along her own path and put this encounter behind them. After a brief moment of reflection, Sarah replied that if this was the master's wish, they would not object and would carry out his will, though it would leave them with a genuine sense of regret. The thought of watching the girls break down in tears unsettled him. He dreaded having to explain that their time together could never become something lasting. Sooner or later, he would inevitably return to his own world. With gratitude for their rescue, Sarah requested permission for herself and her sister to remain by their master's side, offering their service in return for his kindness. The girls often found themselves daydreaming about how wonderful it would be if their master took them along to his other world. The idea delighted them so much that their spirits lifted at once. Eagerly, they began to implore Ramad to take them along, for this world no longer held anyone else for them. The unexpected offer left him stunned, and in his mind's eye he pictured himself arriving home accompanied by two beautiful girls. The thought crossed his mind of Asuka's likely fury if he returned home accompanied by two beautiful women claiming to be his slaves and addressing him as their master. Without a doubt, Asuka would have been disappointed, and would have told her grandfather that she never imagined Ramani could be such a repulsive person. In his dreams, Reima imagined a lavish life in Japan, surrounded by two enchanting servant girls. Yet clarity soon dawned on him. Traveling with the sisters offered a cunning way to mask his escape from the capital and slip away unnoticed. Eventually, they agreed to embark on the journey together, concluding that their first priority should be crossing the imperial border. The long journey demanded resources, so Raman chose to sell the spoils he had taken from the fallen merchant, and found himself in front of a jeweler's shop. After apologizing for the long wait, he informed Raman that all the jewels together would fetch 3,000 gold coins. The amount left, Roman astonished, prompting him to ask if he had heard correctly. Uncertain about his reaction, the girl wondered aloud if the price she proposed did not suit him. The young woman explained that she was certainly willing to apologize, but pointed out that if Romance tried to sell all the jewels at once, it was unlikely he would succeed. She offered him the necessary amount of money, but made it clear that if an agreement could not be reached, she would have to look for another option. He replied that he was satisfied with everything, and had no intention of wasting time searching for another buyer. Hearing this, the girl brightened and promised to pass the message along. Noticing the sly grin on the merchant's face, she pointed out that someone could easily cheat him in this deal. Arguing would have been pointless, so I stayed silent. In the end, the man pocketed his money and chose to move on. I explained to the girls that before selling all my valuables, I had set aside 2 rings just for them, choosing each one with great care from everything I owned. Later, Sarah delivered troubling news. The border had been sealed. From the local adventurers' guild, they learned that Princess Sheldon herself had arrived in the city. If this had been just a routine blockade, bribing the guards could have easily secured their escape from the Empire. Now, however, the circumstances had grown far more complicated. She noted that openly opposing the princess was as good as signing one's own death sentence. Sarah commended her sister and calmly explained that accusations of treason were bound to follow. Apologies spilled from him as he admitted to dragging the girls into such perilous events. Meanwhile, Sarah raised a thoughtful question, wondering whether the host was truly certain that the princess had come here because of him. Ramash did not blame himself for everything, but if someone truly orchestrated such an intense pursuit, caution was essential. Lingering in one place for too long was simply not an option. Examining the map of the empire, Rima realized the eastern border had already been sealed off. The safest option now was to take the main road out of the city and seek refuge in the northern forests. Although this route carried risks, especially since the princess's soldiers were familiar with the area and likely to set traps, the alternative seemed far worse. Remark recalled that risk is a noble pursuit, and that fortune tends to side with the bold. Inspired, he urged his beautiful slave girls to flee northward. Resolute determination filled him as he realized his only choice was to fight for survival and show his pursuers who truly held the role of hunter, and who remained the prey in this deadly game. Sato's chief assistant speculated that the hired assassin was most likely heading for the eastern border. The only escape route led through a dense and tangled forest. Sato suggested setting up a trap in the forest, convinced this was their smartest option. Yet the identity of the criminal remained a mystery. Princess Shalvan listened to Sato's plan with keen interest and responded with confidence, assuring him that this obstacle would not stand in their way. Yet above all, the words of the killer themselves hold the key. Once heard, it becomes immediately clear that this person does not belong to our world. In the depths of the northern forest, the princess and Sato moved side by side. Sheldon claimed he possessed a method to determine if the visitor truly hailed from another world. Seated in silence by the fire, he watched the shadows, tense and alert for any sign of danger. His instincts proved true when Sato approached moments later, offering calm reassurances and insisting there was no need for suspicion or fear. Explaining there was no reason for concern, he reassured everyone that no one had been left behind. Afterward, he apologized for his sudden arrival and politely requested permission to join the group by the fire. With a wary glance, the stranger eyed Sato and coolly announced that he had not given permission for anyone to sit beside him. Sato, undeterred by the remark, went straight to the point and asked what business the young man had in such a dangerous place. Reaching cautiously for his sword, he explained that the eastern border of the city had recently been sealed. Forced to find an alternative route, he ended up navigating this perilous area. No one could tell just how tightly the empire had sealed its borders. Staying in the city now meant nothing more than wasting precious time. Along the way, Rimat had taken the time to clarify to the stranger that he was in no way. Rimat advised against venturing alone into the treacherous forest. Packs of wild wolves roamed the area, prowling restlessly through the shadows. Satu cautiously inquired whether Rome was being followed. If that were the case, his desire for solitude would make perfect sense. However, Rome pointed out that Satu himself wandered the forest alone, acted in a suspicious manner, and had yet to introduce himself or clarify his identity. Apologizing for his mistake, he finally introduced himself and explained that important business had brought him to this place. In addition, he revealed his position as the vice-captain of the Succubus Knights of the Ultima Empire, a rank that granted him unrestricted access to every corner of this domain. While streaming his excitement, Ramatred offered Sato a generous slice of roasted meat. The vice-captain accepted the treat with a polite smile, expressing his gratitude for the gesture. He explained that, in truth, he was pursuing only one person in the forest. Unfortunately, circumstances had left him without any idea of the culprit's appearance, forcing him to ask for assistance. Ramesh received an explanation that he needed to accompany the speaker to the camp of his own free will. There, they would have the opportunity to sit down together and calmly discuss the situation, clarifying all the details. After some time, Sato hurried to inform the princess that he had managed to capture a man in the forest. The distinctive scent made it obvious that the stranger had arrived from another world, just like others of his kind. Shaldana praised her trusted assistant and ordered him to take her to the captive at once. Returning to the tent where Ramao was held, he apologized for the delay. He then explained that his superior was eager to meet him. Ramao responded with a touch of humor, remarking that while he didn't mind meeting new people, holding a cow in his arms seemed to be a bit much. The deputy captain inquired whether the burdensome and awkward shackles would be removed once the situation became clear and suspicions were dispelled. Sato reassured him that this would certainly happen, though only after a conversation with the princess. Within minutes, Shaldana stepped into the tent. An undeniable impression swept over her. The entire atmosphere revolved around this girl, radiating an almost tangible sense of danger. Expressing gratitude, she first thanked Romal for agreeing to meet with her. She conveyed appreciation on behalf of the entire empire, emphasizing how crucial it was to clarify certain recent events. A suspicion already forming in his mind, he asked once more to confirm if the young woman before him was indeed Princess Shalvan. He confirmed her identity and status, then apologized for the necessity of the handcuffs binding her wrists. Remy assured him that she understood. Making her way through the forest under such circumstances could certainly raise suspicions. Sheldon remarked that, in truth, her actions were not all that suspicious, yet some questions still remained unanswered. At that moment, he asked directly if Ramayahu was truly the person from another world whom the imperial soldiers were searching for. Striving to maintain his composure, he replied that he did not understand what was being discussed. The princess, however, advised him to stop pretending ignorance and to speak honestly, reminding him that, in such circumstances, there was no benefit in hiding the truth any longer. Even when a member of the royal family addressed Rame in the most formal language, our conversations with each other remained completely casual. For the people of this world, such familiarity was unacceptable and far beyond what they would ever allow themselves. In this world, royalty stand just a step below the gods themselves. Ordinary folks, upon realizing a princess was in their presence, would instantly drop to their knees in awe. Rama realized his mistake, and the princess instantly noticed the surprise flickering on his face, though she acknowledged his effort. Shaldana then invited the young man to introduce himself. The moment Rama spoke his name, the princess understood at once that he hailed from Japan. It turned out that the boy with glasses, named Sato, possessed more Japanese qualities than one might initially assume. The vice captain acknowledged this, explaining that when Sato was summoned to this world, he was already Japanese at heart. As instructed, the idle chatter ceased, and it was explained that from now on, Ramayahu would remain under the watchful supervision of the vice captain. Only after this measure would the group consider their next steps, taking all of his actions into account. Unable to find better words, gratitude flowed from me as I thanked the princess for her honesty. Shaldana, however, could not hide her astonishment. Despite being weakened by the summoning ritual, Romand had not only managed to escape, but had also overcome every obstacle in his path. For the Imperial Guard, this was nothing short of disgrace. Had Romand agreed to join forces, uniting the lands of this continent would have been within reach. He replied that the very notion of serving the Empire's interests struck him as both absurd and unacceptable. Shaldander emphasized the vastness of his own power, and reminded him that any being summoned from another world must obey the one who called them forth. At that moment, Sato couldn't help but think the princess's words sounded utterly delusional. The deputy captain found himself baffled by Ramai's unshakable calm, as if unaware of the dire predicament surrounding him. Scouts could return at any moment, and even without them, the camp brimmed with seasoned soldiers. Anxiety continued to gnaw at Sato. After all, the Vice Defiers remained the most formidable force in the world. The other two displayed exceptional strength and unwavering confidence. Meanwhile, the captain apologized before turning to the princess to request a moment of her attention. The order from His Majesty echoed in his mind. Capture the human alive, but show no mercy to the outsider from another world. Outraged by such audacity, the princess demanded to know where Sato found the courage to defy her command, disarm her, and even seize the sword without permission right before her eyes. He pledged to accept any punishment, but only after he disposed of this dangerous man. The sole surviving warrior could only recount that a terrifying beast had attacked them, as if conjured from another world. Ralph remained skeptical, refusing to accept such a tale. In his mind, a being summoned from another realm would surely be weakened by the journey. Determined not to waste another moment, he resolved to investigate the matter himself, thoroughly and without delay, so he could track down the stranger as quickly as possible. The battle captain leveled his sword at Remazu, warning that he would grant him final words solely because they shared Japanese blood. In response, Remazu calmly declared that even at the edge of death, he saw no reason to converse with foreigners. Sato found himself taken aback, silently acknowledging the remarkable courage that Remazu possessed. He quietly admitted that this wasn't entirely true, as out of everyone present, only he, Sato, and the princess would soon face death. Moments before Rora unleashed her magical assault, the vice captain sensed the imminent danger and managed to push the prince out of harm's way. Emerging from beneath the debris, Sato offered the princess an apology and asked if she was all right. Sheldon assured him she was unharmed and wondered what had just occurred. Still uncertain himself, Sato guessed they had likely been attacked by the Windblade magic. Reima expressed gratitude to his loyal maid for arriving at exactly the right moment. In response, the girl beamed with joy, admitting how glad she was to find her master safe and unharmed. Stunned by the sight before him, Ramad watched as the young sorceress aided the man from another world. Her remarkable skill did not escape his notice. Thanks to Rora's magic, not even a fragment of the shattered wall managed to harm him. She replied that her greatest wish was to please her master in every way, and to carry out her duties to the best of her ability. Sago was stunned to realize that this stranger from another world had not only an ally, but also a devoted servant completely loyal to him. Thoughts churned in Sago's mind as he wondered where Sarah had disappeared to, but the answer soon revealed itself. The second sister had dispatched the remaining guards with astonishing speed, and now emerged in the half-collapsed tent. She calmly recounted how she had dispatched the soldiers with ease, the foolish guards so unprepared for a magical assault that they offered no resistance at all. In that very moment, the realization dawned on them. They were under attack by battle slaves, skilled in the use of powerful offensive magic. Such a discovery stirred surprise, for in this fantastical realm, only a rare few possessed true mastery over magic. Those select individuals who pledged allegiance to the Empire received, at the very least, the esteemed title of knight. Everything hinges on a person's abilities. However, even an ordinary mage can match the might of an entire army of seasoned warriors. Struggling to rise from the ground, Sheldon stared at the girls in astonishment, demanding to know who they were and how they dared attack Imperial soldiers. His questions hung unanswered in the air. Everyone knew well that slave girls always obeyed their master's commands without question. Yet these young women stood out, remarkable for their quiet confidence and inner strength. The mystery of why such powerful sorceresses would follow an ordinary boy from another world eluded me, especially considering he had only just arrived here a few days prior. The princess leaned in and whispered softly to the vice captain, insisting they must find a way to escape. Romolf, catching on instantly, offered a knowing smile and asked if they truly believed escape from this world was possible. She explained to her mentor that he now had a remarkable opportunity to prove himself. After all, if he managed to eliminate a member of the royal family, once more he weighed his decision, uncertainty gnawing at him about whether he could truly stand against opponents far stronger than himself, no matter how much effort he put in. What troubled him most, however, was the same lingering concern: the mysterious Princess Sheldana, whose combat prowess might far exceed all expectations. He ordered his attendants to halt at this very spot. Although the original plan had been to annihilate every last one of them, the opposing group showed remarkable skill and cunning. Despite their smaller numbers, the unpredictable nature of battle could easily tilt the outcome in unforeseen ways. He explained that neither sister could be allowed to surpass the other in strength. The battle ahead carried the risk of claiming both their lives. Turning to the girls, he asked if they were truly prepared to sacrifice themselves for this cause. Still, it is important to remember that Sado is just an ordinary boy, whose only wish is to protect the royal family. Remark has openly admitted that he does not want Rora or Sarah to lose their lives. The host's words came as a shock, placing their lives on the same level as the princesses and refusing to endanger them. Sheldon found himself respecting Romaz's choice. After asking for a moment's patience, he expressed his wish to stay behind, explaining that he had an important question to ask. With a calm voice, he revealed that in truth, he was just an ordinary student attending a typical school. Unimpressed, Sato listened skeptically and insisted that he share the full story in greater detail. Sato remained skeptical of those words, pressing further to understand how Rimac, known as a peaceful person in modern Japan, could so easily take lives. Could it be that Sato truly believes one should simply stand still and endure the blows in a situation like this? For most people, responding in kind feels only natural. Rimac made it clear he would never start a fight, but if someone attacked him, he wouldn't just hold back. Memories of his mentors, Shido and Rupin, come to mind. Time and again, they emphasized that he only steps into a fight when he is truly resolved to destroy his opponent. Yet, recognizing that this was no moment for philosophical discussions, the young man swiftly directed the girls to leave the ruined camp at once. One of the soldiers shouted after them, warning that they could run anywhere they wished. But the day would come when the Empire united the entire central continent, leaving nowhere left to hide from retribution. In response, Remar simply remarked that, in that case, he ought to return to his home planet as soon as possible. A few days later, after crossing the Empire's border, Rame and his loyal slave girls found themselves in the heart of a vast desert. Following Sarah's advice, they headed toward the bustling market stalls by the oasis, a place always teeming with people. There, they could purchase all they needed and perhaps discover a way to return to other worlds. The ground beneath his feet began to quake, and within seconds, a colossal monster burst forth from the sand. Its sudden appearance called to mind the legendary creature Ramev had read about in a long-forgotten science fiction novel. Remuda found herself taken aback by the sudden emergence of a colossal sandworm. However, she later learned that such creatures were nothing out of the ordinary in these desert lands. In that moment, he noticed the monster had turned its back to him, presenting a perfect opportunity to strike. The girls watched the perilous scene unfold, fear etched on their faces. The possibility crossed his mind that this might be a trap. Perhaps the sandworm would dodge his attack, only to launch a surprise assault from behind. I explained to the girls that our next move would be to engage this formidable foe. Within me, the sisters quickly warned their master. The sandworm's vision was so sharp that sneaking up on it was nearly impossible. Yet Rame reassured them, explaining that his plan did not depend on outwitting the creature's sight. All they needed was to distract the beast and throw it off balance. He went on to mention that, in truth, this hardly increased the risk, as long as everyone remained cautious. With that reassurance, the focus shifted to pressing forward toward their destination. In a matter of minutes, everything was over. The massive sandworm, fatally wounded, lay still, though it was still breathing. The girls offered Remus the chance to deliver the final blow, but he refused. He explained that he had no interest in doing so and told them they could finish it themselves. The group received another reminder. Remac's primary advantage lay in his ability to absorb all the waste around him. His true strength rested in his power to consume and take in whatever surrounded him. Although Raman had heard this explanation many times before, he decided to seek clarification once again. Many of the local rules seemed strikingly similar to those found in games. Allowing someone else to whittle down a monster's health to its bare minimum before stepping in to finish it off offered a convenient advantage. Despite the enchanting beauty of this fantastical world, Reima's thoughts often drifted back to his hometown, and a deep longing to return to Tokyo filled his heart. Before long, the travelers arrived at the Oasis of Mirrors, a city nestled in the very heart of the kingdom of Helniskilt. Upon reaching the city, the travelers sought refuge at the home of the renowned enchantress Anna Maria. It was she who revealed to the wanderer that returning to his own world could no longer be achieved. Her reply left him stunned. He explained that he had spent 2 long months journeying through the harsh desert to reach this city, drawn by the promise that Anna Maria alone knew the way back to his home. Cantress explained that magic in this world falls into 3 distinct categories: martial arts magic, word-based magic, and bestowed magic. In truth, all magical arts are confined to these 3 branches. The magic of martial arts focuses on enhancing one's own abilities and does not require the use of incantations. Its effects are felt solely by the practitioner who wields it. Mastering the art of sorcery requires careful study of incantations and a dedicated offering of one's power to gods, demons, or spirits to summon otherworldly phenomena. The magic of 3 stands as an art of endowment, granting weapons a unique seal that enables them to absorb the magical energy of their wielder. Magic draws its power from the spoken word. To perform a summoning ritual, a sorcerer must offer up their own magical energy to the deity. Summoning someone from another world proves less challenging than expected, since sorcerers always discern which creature will accept their magical power. However, returning a person to their own world demands a sacrifice of magical energy offered to the god governing that realm. Without permission from the god of their own world, a person cannot return home. This remains the greatest obstacle facing all mages. He pondered the revelation, wanting to be certain he understood. To perform the ritual, the only requirement was to discover the name of God from his own world. Anna Maria confirmed his understanding, explaining that this knowledge formed the essential core of the ritual. Delight sparked in him upon hearing the news. If things were truly as they seemed, this would be a wonderful chance to meet the enchanting modern. The young man explained to the sorceress that he possessed the names of many gods from his own world. Should that knowledge prove insufficient, he would seek further information from others who, like him, had been summoned to this place. It was assumed that somewhere in this world, certain records might exist. Should those records be discovered, they could potentially... Sorceress Anna Maria revealed an enormous book filled with the records of people like Rame, individuals who all longed to return to their distant home planet. The source of the rumors about her extraordinary abilities remained a complete mystery to her. Most likely this person was aware the book was in their possession, which is why they offered that particular advice. Rora and Sarah grew curious about the meaning behind the words. The witch had already tried every possible way to reach out to gods from other worlds. Arya explained that this book had been revised over several centuries, emphasizing how challenging that process truly was. The answer weighed heavily on him. The witch calmly explained that this was the true nature of their world. This time, extraordinary luck favored Rommel, as it seemed he alone held control over his own fate. During the encounter, the sister observed the mentor's unwavering composure. He maintained his calm both while rescuing them and throughout the confrontation with the princess. Despite her reminder to her sister that their mentor truly possessed a kind heart, Rory remained unconvinced. At that moment, a wild fury consumed Ramau, rendering him capable of obliterating anyone in his path. Ramau's anguish stemmed not only from the despair of being unable to return home. A deeper, unnamed fury gnawed at him, refusing to let his mind rest. He wanted Rory to understand that she would feel just as outraged if someone forced one of them into slavery while allowing the other the freedom to choose her own partner. She noted that in such situations, everyone sought to revive their beloved system in their own unique way. Sarah explained that Rayma experienced similar emotions, though for the girls, those feelings took on their own distinct shape. Naturally, many found themselves without the skills needed for self-defense. People summoned from another world came from all walks of life carrying vastly different abilities and experiences. Memories of countless people forced into slavery and scorned by all flicker through Rima's mind. With every recollection, his resentment toward this world, thrust upon him against his will, intensifies. A storm of fury simmered within Ramio, teetering on the edge of eruption, ready to unleash itself upon the world. The servants grew increasingly anxious about their master's condition. For 2 days, Ramio had remained locked inside his room, refusing to let anyone enter or even show himself. Meanwhile, the young man's mind wandered through a sinister and unsettling realm. An unfamiliar voice pressed him to awaken his inner fury. The voice insisted it possessed the deepest understanding of what was happening to Romand Alem. The question arose, what did Romand desire most at that moment? With honest longing, the boy confessed his greatest wish was to return home, where Master Shido and his enchanting granddaughter Asuka awaited him. In response, the mysterious being revealed that such a possibility truly existed. Such a task calls for a meaningful sacrifice, unwavering determination, and a clear understanding of every twist and turn. Roman must grasp exactly what is expected of him and uncover the true cause behind all the misfortunes. A mysterious voice responded, insisting that the problem did not lie within him, but with the world itself, a place twisted beyond all recognition. Blame rested solely with the one who had crafted this warped reality and repeatedly cast him upon the altar of sacrifice. For Ramamu to reclaim what is rightfully his, he must first destroy Difile and then allow his body to be used. A mammoth possesses astonishing strength, capable of silently erasing an entire world from existence. At that moment, two young sisters worked desperately to revive their beloved mentor. They explained that his cries had reached their ears, compelling them to burst into the room without hesitation to offer their help. As consciousness slowly returned, the realization dawned on him that the cheerful girls clinging to his sides were hugging so tightly he could barely breathe. The girl suggested they head to the cafeteria for a bite to eat. Ma had not touched a single crumb since he locked himself in that room. Accepting her invitation, he joined her, and together they stepped out into the hallway. Surprise flickered across his face as he noticed the shattered front doors, once sturdy and imposing, now broken. The girls explained that they had been forced to break them down after hearing desperate cries from inside. It became clear to them that none of this had been necessary. Asking the owner for a spare key would have sufficed. Without delay, he located the innkeeper, who warmly invited him to sample the freshly prepared, steaming hot stew. Tempted by the delicious-looking meal, Ramesh's eyes widened in astonishment at the enormous portion set before him. He hesitantly confessed that there was no way he could finish so much food. The innkeeper, however, simply waved off his concern, insisting that the dish was prepared with both him and the two servant girls accompanying him in mind, certain that Ramesh had finally dropped his jokes. Mr. C explained that ever since Romance had locked himself in his room for reasons unknown, the two maids had gone hungry as well. With urgency, he urged against heartlessness and insisted the girls be fed at once. The news stunned Rem. He had no idea the maids had been going without food. Ramu expressed his gratitude to the attentive innkeeper, but the woman simply explained that she was just tending to her business, one that provided her with a steady income. True thanks, she insisted, ought to be given to other people. Choosing not to argue with the stern hostess, Rimast merely thanked her again for the delicious meal. Nevertheless, the woman reminded him that he still owed her for the broken door. Within minutes, the young man found himself back in his room, extending an invitation to the two lovely ladies to join him for dinner. Eager anticipation lit up Sarah and Rora's faces, for this was the moment they had long been waiting for. Suddenly, Sarah urged Raman to calm himself and rein in his anger, warning that letting it explode could lead to dire consequences. Offering his apologies to the girls for making them worry about him, Rembers listened as the sisters reassured him that there was nothing wrong with their concern. Yet in that moment, he realized this world was truly their home, a place where their hearts would always remain. It made no difference how deeply the master despised you, or by what means he had forged this world. In every situation, they would remain steadfast allies to him. The sight of such unwavering loyalty deeply amused him, and with a playful tone, he called the girls genuine fools. The sisters failed to catch the joke and assumed their words had seriously angered the master, making them fear things would only worsen. Yet, within moments their worries faded away because, in that moment, understanding washed over everyone. If their host were to shed tears, nothing shameful would cling to that act. Here was a boy striving to stand tall among adults, though in truth, a child's innocence still lingered within him. Trying to hide his childish embarrassment, the young man suggested they focus on dinner and simply enjoy the stew in silence for a while. At dawn, The sisters departed the abandoned city and continued their journey through the heart of the continent. Along the way, they managed to defeat a giant mantis, a creature whose body parts are always highly valued by merchants in every town. Curiosity prompted her to ask her master why he hadn't fully invested the wealth he'd earned as a merchant of Asu, and why he continued to wander through hazardous lands. This thought so absorbed her that, for a moment, she completely forgot about the plump man who had once been her previous owner. The young man revealed that this world held neither family nor home to return to. Genuine friends eluded him as well, so he chose to continue wandering, seeking adventure in the hope of finding meaning along the journey. After a brief moment of thought, Remast chose to offer a more detailed explanation. Although traveling brings much, it cannot truly serve as the ultimate meaning of life. As a warrior, his journeys begin for a different purpose. He admitted that the wisdom passed down from his grandfather, gained through countless trials, had proven invaluable. That experience awakened within him a newfound strength. Clenching his fist, he sought proof through touch, yearning to confirm the existence of this mysterious power for himself. Remind your master that he is mistaken in thinking himself utterly alone in this world, without friends or family. By his side, there are always two devoted maids, ever ready to offer support and lend a helping hand whenever he may need it. Offering a heartfelt apology, he admitted that loneliness had weighed heavily on him. Now, though, a sense of relief washed over him, and gratitude filled his words as he thanked the girls for their kindness and care. The travelers arrived at the gates of a picturesque port city, where the cries of seagulls echoed through the air. The roar of waves reached their ears, and the brisk, salty sea breeze filled their lungs. A look of surprise flickered across his face as he glanced around, finding himself in an unfamiliar city where many of the inhabitants struck him as rather peculiar. Even so, a gentle air of peace and tranquility lingered throughout the surroundings. The local branch of the Fulsar Adventurers Guild welcomed the travelers, where they soon met the guildmaster, Walls High Nickel. With a warm smile and a friendly manner, this young leader made a strong first impression. The news brought him no joy. In truth, a sense of unease had already taken root when the guild's administrator first summoned him to the guildmaster's office for what was described as an important discussion. Curiosity overcame him as he wondered why this particular task had fallen into his hands. The assignment felt out of place for someone of his limited experience, and it was certainly not a routine matter for him. Master Walls, noticing his hesitation, explained that the guild faced a shortage of available workers, and the rules allowed even newcomers to be assigned crucial missions. Offering a word of apology for the sudden responsibility, Walls emphasized the importance of the client, noting their value to the guild. It became clear that this time, the mission involved escorting a group of merchants from their city to the distant town of the Road Syria Kingdom. Sarah turned to the guildmaster and asked what would happen if they chose to refuse the assignment. With an unshakable smile, he calmly explained that if they refused, their licenses and guild membership would be suspended. Following a review of their refusal, they could even lose the right to participate in the guild altogether. The guildmaster clarified that, regardless of the circumstances, the reward for this mission would be exceedingly generous. In addition, to strengthen the team, several top mercenaries would accompany them, and the guild would provide all participants with the finest equipment available. Ramao reluctantly accepted the peculiar mission. Awe filled him at the sight of the grand carriage glowing with golden jewels. The extravagant vehicle made him wonder if this was the magnificent equipment the guildmaster had mentioned. A few minutes later, a girl approached and remarked that this assignment seemed rather odd to her. After all, she had already double-checked everything herself. Introducing herself as Leona, the commander of the Pink Lion Squad, she met Remag. He greeted her warmly, quietly noting her remarkable beauty. Liona went on to introduce a burly man named Balls and a clown, highlighting Balls as her right-hand man. At that moment, a stranger approached the group and addressed the adventurers. Dissatisfaction colored his words as he glanced at his escort, doubting that two young women and a boy wielding a sword with only one arm could truly ensure his safety. The unexpected boldness left him taken aback, prompting him to inquire about the identity of the stout man. Sarah speculated that this must be the very person they were meant to find. In that moment, The merchant suddenly realized that these two twin girls standing before him were, in fact, battle slaves. Suddenly, an interest in the sisters awakened within him as he realized their true worth. He suggested the girls put their trust in him, promising to help them find a worthier master. With their beauty, he insisted, they deserved to rest in silk sheets rather than struggle for survival on the dusty arena floor. Determined to take control of the situation, he approached the miserable merchant and offered to reveal his secret, otherworldly combat technique. This display was meant to firmly establish his authority within the tavern. Masara received advice to relax and not worry so much about his mission. Yet the life of a merchant in this world remained a demanding journey, filled with constant challenges. When Messiah's firm hands landed on Raman's shoulders, for a fleeting moment, he wondered if the man intended to give him a massage. Our journey continued to the merchant's place, where the martial arts master was allowed to approach him from behind. While Nasara had already started to sense the true meaning of these words, it was Rame who offered the crucial explanation about what was most dangerous. The crowd continued to cheer for Rame, praising him as a model of good manners. Still, he pressed on, pointing out how remarkably easy it was to see through the merchant's intentions. Before Masara could gather his wits, powerful hands closed around his neck, squeezing tightly. Rimas remained calm and focused, his voice quiet as he asked whether Masara was hiding something from the others or perhaps lying to them. After what seemed like a pleasant conversation with the merchant, Raman gathered his group to deliver a stark warning. In his view, the traitor was nothing more than a treacherous liar. Raman suspected that their current mission was little more than a cunningly crafted trap. A thoughtful look crossed his face as he pondered whether this was truly what Rama had uncovered when grabbing the traitor by the collar. Yet the traitor merely waved away the suggestion, claiming the lie had already been exposed long ago and that he had seized the scoundrel simply out of disgust. With a note of regret, Liana added that, unfortunately, they still knew nothing about the purpose of this trap or its intricacies. With a calm detachment, I suggested to Liana that she consider withdrawing from the mission. Unmoved, she insisted that turning back was out of the question. For now, they had only suspicions, and abandoning the task would shatter their team's hard-earned reputation. The explanation follows. Should the guild's reputation suffer, the full weight of responsibility would fall squarely on their shoulders. In such a situation, the risk of losing their licenses, and perhaps for good, would become all too real. At first glance, mercenaries and adventurers may appear to live without constraints, enjoying true freedom. In reality, their independence exists only because of the guild's support. Without its guidance, securing decent work would become a daunting challenge, and even crossing the kingdom's border would be nearly impossible, for none of them can afford to lose the protection of their own hound. Admitting his ignorance of the true reason behind traitor Masara's deception, he expressed certainty that someone far more influential pulls the strings. The merchant himself most likely serves merely as a spy, a pawn in a much larger game. Let him know there's a strong chance this trap was set specifically with him in mind. The gleaming, extravagant carriage owed its presence here to the influence of the aristocrats. Their involvement in this affair seemed undeniable. The suggestion was made to invite a few more members from her main squad, but Rima declined, reasoning that it would appear as if suspicions had already arisen. After all, this remained a personal matter. He mentioned he didn't want innocent bystanders to die because of him. The words drew a wry smile from the seasoned adventurer. With an amused look, Leona remarked that Romao was either a truly upstanding young man or a hopeless fool, untouched by the troubles of the world. She made it clear that both she and her companions might be hired assassins, perfectly capable of harming Rama. Nevertheless, Rama engages them in open, trusting conversation, despite having known these potential killers for only a few hours. Rama, having sized up Lion's intellect, quipped that if it was truly as sharp as rumored, he might as well surrender and accept his fate. Laughter swept through the group, but Lion simply waved a hand, urging everyone not to make a fuss about it. Admitting his inability to drive the wagon, he asked Roru to handle the matter. The sisters reiterated their unwavering willingness to obey their master's commands and assured him he need not concern himself with their opinions. With that resolved, Rahman turned to Bolts and inquired whether he possessed any magical abilities, explaining that, if so, there would be an important task for him. The conversation by the campfire gradually faded as everyone drifted off to their tents. Left alone, Bolts wandered through the quiet camp for quite some time, his gaze fixed on the endless tapestry of the night sky. Standing nearby, she suspected that the trap might have been set specifically for her, given her position as captain of the mercenaries. It was possible that this entire situation had nothing to do with romance at all. A small pact was struck between them, a quiet promise exchanged. Should one fall to the cunning hand of a murderer, neither would let jealousy take root in their heart. Surprise had no chance to register before her arms tightened around him, drawing him close. Liana suggested they become more familiar with each other, convinced that a shared closeness might make their mission far more engaging. Two furious sisters suddenly stormed onto the scene, their faces twisted with wild jealousy. Without hesitation, they shoved Liana away from their master's side. Reassurance fell on deaf ears as the sisters received explanations that there was nothing to worry about. A harmless kiss was hardly unusual. Yet suspicion lingered. Convinced that Liana aimed to harm their master, they merely pretended to be at ease after hearing about the kiss. Seizing the opportunity, she invited Ramit to spend time with her in an elegant carriage, subtly suggesting an entertaining afternoon, especially with the promise of exquisite wine. Rahman found himself stunned by the girl's openness. With voices raised in outrage, Sarah and Raymond declared that tricking a minor into drinking alcohol and attempting to seduce them amounted to a true crime. Suddenly realizing he was about to miss a perfect chance to spend time with Leona, he hurried to declare his enthusiasm for a strategic meeting with his ally, and even admitted he wouldn't mind sharing a drink. However, the angry slaves quickly silenced their master, curtly suggesting he keep his thoughts to himself. The merchant's caravan set out on its journey, unaware that watchful eyes tracked their every move, and patient figures waited for the moment they would finally leave the royal forest. The commander of the Guardian warriors ordered his troops to open fire on the caravan, forcing it to split apart, which would make capturing prisoners much easier. Steadying the nerves of his subordinates, he reassured them there was no need for unnecessary bloodshed. Their main objective was to prevent the witch from escaping into the forest. Moments later, a relentless shower of arrows rained down on the merchants. The sudden barrage plunged the caravan into chaos. Desperate to avoid the deadly hail, the traders scrambled for cover and urged their convoy onward at a frantic pace. As a squad of riders rapidly closed in on the rear of the caravan, an urgent order was given. The merchants were to press forward without delay, while the others stayed behind to hold off the pursuers. The group prepared to uncouple the heavy wagon and gave the girls a firm warning to hold on tight so they wouldn't lose their balance when the wagon lurched forward. Within minutes, the heavy wagon was unhitched from the horses, only to topple over with a loud crash at the first bump in the road. Recognizing her chance, Mac seized the opportunity to use the confusion and widen the gap between herself and her pursuers. Laura pointed ahead, warning that the merchants walking in front had already drawn their swords toward them. The danger grew with each passing moment as Romail anxiously searched for a way to escape the tightening trap. The two squads advanced toward each other, steadily closing the circle. Although such a turn of events seemed predictable, within minutes everything shifted dramatically as fear unexpectedly gave way to surprise. The merchant horsemen who had been pursuing the group suddenly turned on each other, their rivalry erupting so fiercely that thoughts of mercenaries or adventurers vanished from their minds. His servant girls remained utterly puzzled, unable to grasp what was unfolding or why the two groups had suddenly started fighting, as if the clash had been orchestrated in advance. Last night, as the firelight flickered, Roman weighed the chances of an attack and concluded that, if it came to that, their group would hold the upper hand. Their greatest advantage lay in an unwavering confidence in the effectiveness of the trap they had so carefully prepared. The challenge lay in figuring out how to use this advantage, since they had no idea what would happen or when it might occur. He attempted to clarify that if the ambush had been suspected, it would make perfect sense for the side launching the first attack to believe they held the upper hand. In this situation, pinpointing the exact location of the impending attack becomes crucial. Gaining this knowledge immediately grants them an advantage and keeps them a step ahead. He explained that, for now, They were nothing more than a band of mercenaries escorting merchants, a role few took seriously. The kingdom had issued no official pursuit, and it made little difference who might fall victim to an attack. Following this principle, Masari remained safe from harm, persistently insisting on her role as a merchant. As a result, the attackers will likely choose the most remote and deserted stretch of the route for their ambush. Instead of a large army, a small and agile unit is more likely to be waiting. By setting up an ambush, a small squad can lure the enemy into a carefully laid trap. This tactic allows the attackers to make the most of the surrounding terrain, turning its features to their advantage. Some people doubted these predictions and wondered if the attackers might choose a completely different place to strike. Still, Remast held firm in his conviction, certain it would be a small group forced to use the landscape to their advantage. Anyone joining this assault must carefully select the most effective strategy for their actions. Failing to do so will cause others to view them as nothing more than mediocre. The adventurer's remarkable imagination left him amazed, while Leona became so deeply absorbed in her thoughts that she eventually lost track of all the fanciful scenarios being woven. One of the Remals suggested they examine the map more closely, pointing out that the valley lay not far from the border of the kingdom of Rhodos. His finger traced the end of the valley near a towering mountain, noting that this spot could serve perfectly as an ambush site. He asked what their course of action would be if an attack struck in the dead of night. Rame, however, calmly explained that such a scenario was unlikely, calling out his name into the darkness, straining to catch a glimpse of anything ahead. At that moment, I had no idea how carefully Sato was planning this attack, anxiously searching for the best solution. The caravan set off on its journey. Reima suggested going over the details once more, cautioning everyone that an attack would most likely occur in the valley near the border. The situation would grow especially dangerous if their enemies turned out to be mages, since fending off a magical assault would prove extremely difficult. The possibility remained that their attackers would seize the high ground, launching stones or a hail of arrows from above. Faced with such a threat, they would need to move with far greater speed. Caution must be exercised around the merchants after an attack. Allowing them a quick escape becomes crucial in such moments. If they later manage to regroup with reinforcements, the situation could turn dangerous. Romy reminded them that such a situation could leave them surrounded. However, he assured everyone that this tactic only made sense when the enemy matched their strength. Their goal was clear. They must outmatch the merchants and, if necessary, break through their ranks. Even if they find themselves caught in a pincer attack, an opportunity to break through remains as long as the weaker merchant stands in their way. Before the battle began, Reima had been confident in his strategy. Now, however, realization struck. His assumptions had been wrong. Rather than adversaries, the merchants proved themselves as unlikely allies, bravely standing their ground against the attackers. Deciding on the next course of action proved challenging. Leona reported that her squad remained unharmed, though, regrettably, several mercenaries had already lost their lives. She also reminded them that, should their plan falter, they must protect the merchants at any cost. Observing the situation, he suggested they revert to their original plan, complete the mission, and ask Leona to gather all the scattered mercenaries. Joining their forces, Ramond ordered an assault on the radar and dispatched a squad of riders to launch the attack. The leader of the squad had not anticipated such cunning from their ruthless adversaries and found himself stunned upon discovering the carriage empty, with the witches already vanished without a trace. Praise showered upon him for his brilliant actions, especially now when the raiders found themselves in a dire predicament. Yet, uncertainty still lingered in his mind, as he wondered whether everything was truly unfolding as it should. Now, all hopes rest on the young slave girl and the promise of her hidden talents. Memories of yesterday's conversation with Sarah surfaced immediately. Her excitement had been palpable, tinged with a trace of uncertainty. She apologized for this wasted time and promised to start preparing for tomorrow right away. Yet Rame gently explained that his purpose was simply to share something very important. Tears streamed down her face as she anxiously asked whether the teacher had lost faith in her or wanted to send her away. Rame quickly soothed her fears, assuring her that such thoughts had never crossed his mind. Tears streamed down Sarah's face with even greater intensity as she convinced herself that Ramek truly looked down on battle slaves. Her strong, muscular build, she believed, was nothing but distasteful in his eyes, especially since masters universally favored slender, beautiful girls. Yet Ramek quickly refuted her thoughts. Discussing appearance had never been his intention, but since the topic was raised, he assured her that she was, in fact, a very beautiful girl. Once the girl calmed down, Remy took the opportunity to explain his intention. They needed to discuss the possible attack expected tomorrow. In addition, Sarah still had to play her final part in this unfolding drama. He explained the plan. As soon as they turned around and lured their enemies into the trap within the magic circle, he would signal Sarah to attack. Her role was to strike their foes with her magical power. A spark of excitement lit up her face as she accepted the responsibility, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. With earnest resolve, she promised to carry out her master's orders to the fullest, determined to destroy every last bandage completely. She explained that the main challenge lay in the fact that the enemies would be advancing on horseback, using human steeds, making it rather difficult to cast spells against such swift and elusive targets. The reason for inviting Bolts to join this assault became clear. His seasoned skills as a mercenary perfectly balanced Sarah's unique abilities. Hoping to boost her confidence, Rima explained that the operation's success rested entirely on her shoulders. Her part was even more crucial than Bolts's. Only she possessed the skill to safely free the girl from the machine, while Bolts would be there merely as support. A deep conviction filled their hearts that only Sarah possessed the power to turn the tide in their favor. All that remained was to wait for her decisive move. Meanwhile, the commander of the raiders worked to arrange a press conference. Merchant Masara, driven by the shock of the surprise attack, resolved to seek her revenge dressed in witch's attire. In just a matter of minutes, everything stood on the brink of ruin. The merchants would have perished along with the ambush, leading to the complete failure of the mission and the loss of their licenses. Frustration gnawed at Remad, leaving him exasperated as the situation spiraled into unexpected chaos. Every avenue had been exhausted, even the desperate ploy with that cursed decoy carriage. Several times, the tempting thought crossed his mind to abandon the valley altogether, surrendering its fate to chance. Yet in the end, he steeled himself to see things through, vowing to confront the impending enemies head-on. Ask Laura how she felt about the repulsive, overweight merchant Masara, who was so eager to sell her off for a quick profit. A vivid memory of the merchant's greedy stare flashed through her mind, igniting a blaze of anger within. With clenched teeth, Laura spat out her hatred for the wretched scoundrel. At that moment, she turned to Lion and asked him to act as a mediator. Meanwhile, the commander of the mercenary squad couldn't shake the memory of the vulgar merchant's repulsive face. Delighted by the girl's cheerful mood, he commanded everyone to surge ahead and seize victory. At that same moment, Rima gave Sarah a subtle signal to begin her spellwork. With a calm incantation of stone bamboo, Saru summoned towering stone pillars that surged from the earth, catching the riders completely off guard. Sarah's magical assault came to an end, the devastation it left behind impossible to overlook. All that remained was to see if anyone had survived and then begin the search for the merchant Masaru. A few minutes later, a message arrived confirming that some had indeed survived, and their numbers had already been tallied. Remap commended the mercenary for such swift action and ordered all the survivors to be gathered in a single location. Awe filled him as he watched the seasoned mercenary blend powerful magic with flawless swordsmanship. Yet Bolts humbly insisted that the true credit belonged to young Sarah. He had merely observed her weaving magic into the battle and felt grateful for such a valuable lesson. Fury burned in Masara's eyes as she threatened the mercenaries and adventurers with the harshest of punishments for treating their client with such blatant disrespect. I explained that the moment the merchants drew their swords and joined forces with the enemy in battle, they ceased to be clients. From that point on, the mercenaries had no further obligation to protect them. The truth emerged. Masara's people were never merchants. The entire tale had been a deception from the start. Alarmed by this revelation, Masara turned to Ramab and asked the reason behind drawing his sword. Next, he suggested putting an end to the deceitful merchant's schemes by simply telling everyone that the man had perished during the attack. In response, Masara muttered in agitation, insisting on his innocence, and pointing out that the true culprits were those who attacked the caravan. Those were the ones who needed to be destroyed. Complained about those cursed knights who always come barging in. So-called heroes who slaughter hundreds without a trace of remorse. In reality, all they do is act senselessly. Masaru was asked to reveal his true identity. In response, he admitted he was nothing more than a slave trader, a man who had spent years trying to escape his life of crime. Desperation crept into his voice as he pleaded for mercy, offering to sell any slave for next to nothing if only he could be spared. During the negotiation meeting, Rama firmly demanded an immediate explanation of the situation. Masara, however, dismissed him with a sneer, mocking the boy as a naive novice meddling in matters far beyond his understanding. Masara possessed a wealth of knowledge, making it essential to uncover more from him by any means necessary. Sarah immediately volunteered her assistance, prepared to resort to harsher tactics if the situation demanded it. A wave of realization washed over Masara as he understood the hopelessness of his situation. He offered a heartfelt apology for the death and the deceit he had caused. Ramayahu, content with this outcome, calmly explained to the merchant that since he had, at last, Masara's final moment arrived, his chilling scream echoing through the night. Bound and helpless, the commander stared in shock, unable to comprehend how such a disaster had befallen his squad. Onder carried an unshakable confidence in victory, his squad hardened by the long pursuit of the witch. In his mind, a clear understanding formed. That witch could one day threaten all of humanity. Approach Captain Michael Donish of the Royal Knights and explain that they now need to carry out a series of actions. The following day, equipped with every vital detail from the merchant, our preparations were complete and we stood ready to set our plan into motion. Officer Michael stood stunned by the strange young man's words, unable to fathom how this boy could possibly know about the heirs to his kingdom. To confirm that the girl standing beside him was indeed the next heir to the throne of the Kingdom of Rhodes. The girl had already introduced herself by name, yet the commander of the Night Watch insisted she also state her surname. At that point, Michael calmly explained that no one here possessed the authority to demand such information from anyone. The realization struck Michael. This vital detail had slipped his mind until now. Of course, the sisters could never use their true surname, Malphist Animal. The man explained that the girl's last name was Mikashiba, and her full name was Sarah Mikashiba. Rimas added with confidence that he was her brother, standing ready to vouch for every word he said. Michael, taken aback, asked again if Rima was truly the girl's brother. Rima responded with a grin, making a playful remark that at the very least, he certainly wasn't her father. Accepting defeat in this exchange, Michael kept his composure and requested that they finish him off quickly without any further delay. In response, he stated that, for now, there was no reason to kill Commander Michael. The courageous knight wondered aloud why delay something that seemed inevitable. Yet Lyona urged Michael to hold back, reminding him that he and his gang were the ones who had struck first. At the same time, he made it clear to the Knight One that he was by no means an enemy of the Knights of the Kingdom of Rhode. Some began to suspect that the nobles themselves might have sent Rima. When asked why she had become entangled in this conflict, Rima explained that this was precisely the heart of the problem. The suggestion arose to bring the matter before the Knight's commander, with the promise that all of Michael's questions would be answered in due time. The man reassured him, calmly explaining that there was no need for concern. This was simply his method for testing the sincerity of the other person's words. A gentle request urged Mikhailo to stay where he was, coupled with a calm assurance that no harm would come his way. In response, the boy called out for Rora, who appeared beside him in an instant. A girl named Montgomery declared that she would be the one asking questions from now on. Michael, surprised by this turn of events, finally saw the truth. Standing before him was not just any girl, but a twin. Realizing resistance was useless, he gave in. In that moment, Rora inquired whether all these people truly served as knights of the Kingdom of Rhode. The girl asked Michael what had driven him to attack the merchant caravan, and wondered whether his actions were somehow connected to the ongoing struggle for the throne. After posing her question, Rora turned her attention to, she clarified, seeking confirmation of her understanding. The knights of the kingdom were battling against the nobles who had pledged their loyalty to the queen. After the king's sudden and unforeseen death, it appeared the princess had stood next in line for the throne. Doubts began to surface regarding whether the noble families had merely used the king's will as an excuse to back the second princess. Memories of his own anxiety crept into Michael's mind, making him realize how daunting it would be to answer all of their questions. As the questions unfolded, Rora paused to clarify her understanding. Was it truly the second princess Michael had targeted for assassination? The knight, shaken by her words, lost what little composure he had left. His anxiety swelled until his emotions broke through, impossible to conceal any longer, understanding everything. Without Michael needing to say a word, the man pointed out that the most important thing now was how events would unfold from here. Liana suggested they were merely being used as bait, and that Guildmaster Voles, who had always seemed an honest man, might actually be playing both sides. The suggestion arose to share the story of what had happened in public and send a formal complaint to other guild branches. Liana commended her partner for coming up with such a sound plan, yet she pointed out that their chances were slim without concrete proof. Carefully, she warned him that continued risks like these would likely lead to exposure. Even if they managed to prove the guildmaster's involvement in these dark schemes, their chances of victory would still disappear. Powerful forces and immense wealth were tied to the conspiracy, leaving almost no hope for success. This was a clash between the state's authority and the immense influence held by the guildmaster of a powerful trading guild. Lacking both the strength and persuasive arguments, they found themselves unable to oppose such overwhelming power. Heard the mercenaries' quiet opinions about the deceitful merchant Masaru. So many years had passed since then. After everything that happened, that sly man would likely never speak again. He vowed to address the situation with the majestic staff, determined to make Masaru see the world from a new perspective and forever remember the bitter moments of his past. Explaining that causing pain to someone like Masaru is a futile effort seems almost unnecessary. Yet, this refined method of torture carries a unique cruelty. When the stick finds its way to the most sensitive spots, even the most resilient person might surrender their secrets with unexpected speed. Michael took a moment to process everything he had just heard, then firmly declared his refusal to accept such claims. In his eyes, the true RS was the first princess, and Sarah remained nothing more than an impostor installed by a scheming aristocrat. Fury burning in his eyes, the commander of the knights declared that Her Majesty, Lady Lupy, stood as the rightful heir to the throne. As expected, Alan immediately sided with Michael. His sudden agreement left everyone present that night genuinely stunned. The explanation followed that Sarah was, in truth, the illegitimate daughter of the previous king, and possessed no rightful claim to the title of princess. At present, she was nothing more than a companion, albeit one born of noble blood. Without delay, Rora interjected, lending her support to her master's statement. Irritation flashed across his face as he ordered an end to the nonsense, weary of the endless stream of lies. With calm composure, Rameh then addressed Nochi, urging her to settle down and explain. He only wished to compare the tales of the deceitful merchant Masar and the representative. Take a moment to collect yourself and recount what happened. Several months ago, after the king passed away and as Princess Lupy was preparing for her coronation, some unexpected news emerged. Rumors whispered that she was an illegitimate child, royal blood quietly coursing through her veins. Within the royal family, heirs born out of wedlock were nothing unusual, as long as their lineage could be proven. In her case, however, the truth of her birth remained shrouded in uncertainty, her connection to the dynasty unverified. At the very moment the first princess declared her intention to rule the kingdom, Marquis Gelgard, the head of the aristocracy, presented what he called the King's Testament. This document revealed support for an illegitimate child living in the neighboring Mouse Kingdom. The knights, steadfast supporters of the first princess, grew increasingly wary of the enigmatic woman. Tension between the two camps soon erupted into a fierce struggle for the throne. The knights loyal to Princess Lupus excelled on the battlefield, their bravery proven in combat, yet their grasp of the kingdom's internal affairs remained minimal. Meanwhile, The noble faction skillfully exploited this weakness, rapidly consolidating its power and influence. As the influence of the knight faction waned and their strength dwindled, the supporters of the aristocratic party steadily solidified their grip on power. It soon came to light that, through Marquis Yelhoff's mediation, envoys from the Kingdom of Mice had secretly arrived in Rod Syria. The most striking feature of this girl was her silvery hair, and her appearance suggested she was no older than a teenager. A keen understanding dawned on him. The knights of the kingdom truly intended to strike against the impostor. Michael confirmed this, emphasizing that it was their sole chance to set things right. She observed that this plan was extremely reckless, and even if successful, would solve nothing. Rayma explained that the knights had likely been tricked, and while they chased after a phantom target, the illegitimate child could have already been hidden away somewhere safe. An agreement emerged that the nobles had deliberately spread false rumors to sow confusion on that night. After giving it some thought, Mikhailo admitted he had been mistaken. It became clear that, besides bribing the guild's craftsmen to find the girl with silver hair, the aristocrats had also enlisted a lawyer. They chose an adventurer whose disappearance would cause little stir, and that unfortunate soul turned out to be him. A dreadful clarity settled over her as she recognized the part she had been forced to play in this deceptive spectacle. It was made clear to her that she had always been the primary target, and no one could have foreseen that Sarah would become the pivotal figure in this unfolding story. He admitted that certain aspects remained a mystery to him. Even after the knights discovered the empty carriage, their pursuit did not waver and they continued to try to kill them. Michael realized he couldn't dismiss the idea that the girl might be in disguise. For him, retreat and ending the fight simply weren't options. Ramal sensed the fierce determination burning within Michael to keep fighting, even as he recognized just how cunningly this seasoned warrior had been deceived. Based on this, it was revealed that Bales had deliberately hired Massart to eliminate the knights and win the favor of the nobility. Such cunning from a member of the Adventurers Guild left him stunned, and he vowed to take revenge at the earliest opportunity. After casting a careful glance at the brave commander, the Knight of the Night spoke calmly, insisting there was no point in dwelling on what had already transpired. Then, he continued with measured words. Anticipating a blow, he stood frozen, yet surprise washed over him as the rope binding his wrist suddenly snapped beneath the edge of a sharp blade. Remain quietly revealed that Michael had been cunningly deceived by the nobles, which had left him trapped in a difficult predicament. Following this, he turned to his nightly visitors and asked whether they could support one another in the days to come, since their situations mirrored each other. A few days later, Ramond, accompanied by his friends and the few surviving knights, arrived at the capital of the Kingdom of Rhodosyria. An audience with Princess Lupy awaited them there. Approaching the guests, she politely asked everyone to lift their heads so she could see their faces, rather than simply glancing at the tops of their heads. Later, she informed Commander Michael about the complaint she had received from Maltina earlier that day. Unfortunately, this troubling incident disrupted his plans and interfered with the completion of his mission. Summoning his courage, he met the princess's gaze and instantly realized there was no kindness in her eyes. Nearing the bustling outskirts of Rhodosyria's capital, the adventurers and the remaining knights found the crowds too overwhelming to press on. They chose instead to spend the night sheltered beneath the forest canopy. During the evening, Ramel caught the sharp tones of Michael's angry voice and went to investigate. It soon became clear that the knight commander and Lion had gotten into a heated argument. The easygoing girl, her voice edged with indignation, demanded to know how Michael could speak of honor after orchestrating such a devious ambush. In response, Michael calmly insisted that he had no other option and acted only for the well-being of the rightful princess. He realized that mercenaries cared only for their own gain, while knights were driven by morals and duty, making any understanding between the two impossible. The man declared that all knights were nothing more than mindless soldiers and brutish thugs, capable only of fighting. Offended by such a degrading remark, Michael promptly demanded an explanation and an apology. Observing the tense scene with curiosity, an interest sparked in discovering the meaning behind dumb athletes. Remy offered an explanation to the girl, describing athletes as those who rely solely on their physical strength, while rarely engaging their intellect. In simple terms, such individuals act first and only consider the consequences later. People like that are often described as those who act without hesitation or fear, letting instinct guide their choices. Such behavior can lead to both positive and negative outcomes. Rora felt satisfied with this explanation, realizing that, in moments like these, following one's heart was sometimes the best path forward. She turned to her sister and asked what she would do if she had to remain a slave forever. In response, Sarah reminded her that they had already discussed the matter and saw no point in revisiting it. With unwavering resolve, she declared her willingness to devote every ounce of strength she possessed to save her sister, undeterred by whoever she might need to overcome along the way. The failed mission that had been entrusted to the seasoned Commander Michael left S. Lupiessa deeply outraged. An attempt to strike up a conversation with Romans was swiftly cut short as he harshly interrupted the girl and ordered her to be silent in the presence of the princess. Suddenly, Lupiessa turned sharply to Romans and asked for his opinion on the entire situation. He replied that he found the situation extremely dangerous and felt nothing could surprise him anymore, not even a sudden attack. By now, he realized the princess was fully aware of every detail behind the failed mission. Clearly, she had set her sights on eliminating the other princess and was carefully hiding her intentions to protect her own reputation. For this reason, Lupus might well decide to silence every witness, ensuring that no secrets could ever escape. His gaze eventually landed on the knight's companion, leading him to conclude that this girl, Meltina, was likely the one who had passed on the information. He concluded that the actions of the night girl bordered on sheer folly. By announcing the failed mission, she had deftly cast suspicion upon Michael, the man whose loyalty to Princess Lupus was unwavering. At such a critical moment for the kingdom, betraying a true ally pointed to either reckless stupidity or a cunning plot. Meanwhile, Hope told Michael that his failure on the mission had led to the deaths of many knights, each of whom had given their lives in the hope of saving the kingdom. Realization struck Rima. Should the princess learn that he was the one responsible for the knights' deaths, the fallout could be disastrous. Commander Michael remains alive and present in this hall, which means there is still an opportunity for this gathering to end peacefully. Princess Lupy announced that she had no choice but to order the execution of Commander Michael because of his failure. A cold shiver crept down his back. The likelihood of escaping this ordeal alive now nearly vanished. Yet the princess astonished everyone once more, announcing that since the whole affair had been nothing more than an elaborate noble trap, the execution would be postponed indefinitely. The princess informed Commander Michael that this would be his final opportunity to redeem himself, inviting him to speak. With solemn determination, Michael vowed never again to disappoint Her Highness and declared his intention to establish a new kingdom. The slave sisters exchanged whispers, their eyes bright with relief at the news that Commander Michael would survive. Meanwhile, the princess avoided mentioning the attack and kept the details of her mission hidden. Viewing matters from a different angle, Lupy recognized an opportunity. She resolved to blame the loss of many knights on a cunning trap set by the nobility. Ramao approved of the princess's choice and felt content with her decision. It became clear that this girl possessed a remarkable intellect. Turning to Sarah, Lupy asked her to stand. He then gently requested that she clarify whether she was truly not the daughter of King Fols II of Rhodesia. With unwavering certainty, she declared that she had no connection whatsoever to the royal family of that country. She calmly explained that her surname was actually Melfist, and the girl standing beside her was her sister, named Rora. Upon hearing the family name, the princess hesitated for a moment, her interest unmistakably piqued by this revelation. She admitted that she had come across that surname once before, somewhere in the central part of the continent. At that very moment, Multina gently reminded the princess that the illegitimate child never had a sister, confirming that Sarah had spoken the truth. Lupus immediately recognized the two girls as twins, leaving no grounds to accuse them of lying any longer. Expressing a keen interest in learning more about Sarah and Roru, she suggested continuing the conversation at a later time. For now, guests were invited to enjoy the warm hospitality of the capital of the Kingdom of Rhodes. Fell once again crossed paths with Princess Lupy and couldn't help but notice the magnificent vase gracing the table, curiosity lighting his eyes as he inquired about its origin. The princess clarified that this precious vase could be taken as a gesture of apology for all the troubles Rame and his friends had endured. Tensions had surfaced in the country, leading to disagreements, and some of the recent measures might have seemed excessively harsh. After expressing his gratitude for the valuable item, he shared a proposal to invite Commander Michael to join their ranks. Lupy explains that she needs some time to carefully consider her decision. Afterward, he apologized for his bluntness and remarked that, given the current situation, Princess Lupy had no chance of winning. One of Meltinge's loyal retainers instantly took offense and vowed to deal with the insolent speaker by cutting him in half. In an instant, the keen edge of a sword hovered dangerously close to Rem's throat, while Meltina barked with fury. How could this commoner dare to speak so boldly in front of the princess? He should have been grateful simply for being allowed into the hall and permitted to sit beside her. Suddenly, Lupy stepped in, gently asking the girl to calm herself and lower the blade from their guest's neck. Once C clarified that the power to decide this boy's fate, whether he should live or die, rested in Meltina's hands, the young woman reluctantly lowered her sword. Observing this, Luipi's smile returned, and she urged Meltina to repeat her words, stressing their importance once more. Remo explained that if the princess allowed him to join, he and his friends could greatly strengthen her army. The princess responded by remarking that his words sounded rather boastful and asked why Remo held such confidence. Determined not to hide his intentions, he confidently declared his ability to lead the princess to a decisive victory, overcoming every rival in their path. He remarked on the young man's remarkable confidence and admitted his own youthfulness. She, in turn, confessed that encounters with people like him were rare in her life. Curiosity flickered in her eyes as she wondered aloud whether Romain could truly be trusted to keep his promise. Determined to see his part through, the young man assured the princess he would reveal all the advantages their agreement had to offer. Princess Lupy readily agreed to the alliance, and the young man noticed the joy lighting up his companions' faces in response. Afterwards, he offered Rory his warmest and most treasured smile. The beautiful young woman pointed out that the valuable vase could prove useful, since they needed money to support the princess in her quest for the throne. With a keen gaze, Lupy examined the new subordinates, quickly noticing the unwavering loyalty of Remus's devoted servants. After his meeting with the princess, Roma made his way to the room where Leona waited. During his important discussion, the mercenary had discovered the royal wine and was now thoroughly enjoying herself, already showing signs of a cheerful intoxication. She explained that overwhelming loneliness and boredom had taken hold of her, prompting her to seize the moment and sample the finest royal wine of the Syrian kingdom, a luxury she had never had the chance to try before. The truth emerged that Leona was eagerly awaiting Remus. Yet in that instant, Leona ordered Bala to keep quiet and reveal nothing more. The scene amused Bramal, who offered the girl his thanks. However, Leona, already far too drunk to restrain her feelings, suddenly burst into tears. Afterwards, she gently asked Romance to steer clear of heavy subjects, reminding him that they could always grow closer and deepen their friendship in more pleasant and enjoyable ways. Embarrassment washed over him, prompting a quick shift in conversation toward a different subject. He explained that in the near future, his goal was to recruit as many mercenaries as possible. In addition to the Pink Lions squad, he needed at least half as many more to join his forces. After considering this situation, he explained that, given the urgency and his current savings, he would still need at least 300 more gold coins. Without hesitation, Fiona patiently explained that what they needed was real money, specifically gold coins, not a work of art that might fetch an unreasonably high price or draw unwanted attention among mercenaries. Ramag listened thoughtfully, agreeing with her logic, and his mind began to race with ideas about where he might find 300 gold pieces. Ramag promised to gather the required amount of gold coins by tomorrow, vowing not to let anything delay him. Leona, meanwhile, gave her word to begin training the mercenaries as soon as possible, assuring everyone that she would handle the task with utmost responsibility. She suggested celebrating their agreement with a royal wine. Within the grand halls of the imperial capital, Altomia, Sato engaged in a private audience with one of the realm's most powerful figures. By the end of their conversation, the man declared his departure set for the following day. The moment had come to seal the fate of the Kingdom of Rhodes.